The chamber is open and full of whispers.
The rain comes sideways in Hogsmeade on the 4th of October. It is the kind of rain that has intent behind it. Cold, purposeful, the sort that finds the gaps in a collar and the space between a boot and a trouser leg. The cobblestones of the high street gleam under guttering lantern light. The shops are closed, the windows are dark. The village, at 2 o'clock in the morning, belongs entirely to the weather. Peter Pettigrew runs. He is not a fast man. He has never been a fast man. His shoes slap against wet stone, and he rounds the corner behind Honeydukes at something between a sprint and a stumble, his wand clutched in his left hand because his right hand is shaking too badly to grip anything. His coat is soaked through. His face is white. Behind him, 20 meters in closing, 2 figures in dark robes match his pace without effort. Avery, Mulciber. They are not running. They are walking, which is somehow worse. Peter knows what this is. He has known, in the soft, flinching part of himself he has been trying not to examine for 2 years, that this night was coming. The Dark Lord's legilimency has been pressing at the edges of his mind for weeks. Gentle at first, curious, then less gentle. The pressure behind his eyes when he attended meetings. The sense of something turning pages in his head, looking for a specific passage. It has not found it yet. The address is still his. Number 4, Godric's Hollow. James and Lily and the boy. He will not give it. He does not know, standing in a Hogsmeade alley with his back against the wall and nowhere left to run, whether this resolution will hold. He is not certain he is brave enough. He has never been certain he is brave enough for anything. What Peter Pettigrew knows, with the absolute clarity of a man who has run out of road, is that he does not want to be the reason they die. He transforms. Wormtail squeezes under the gap in the cellar door in less than a second, small and gray, and moving fast along the stone floor in the dark. He hears Avery's voice above, a finite incantatum, broad and searching, and the transformation collapses. The magic unpicks itself like a seam, and suddenly Peter is human again, folded and gasping in a cold cellar full of empty casks, his wand arm pinned under his own chest. The cellar door opens. Mulciber points his wand down. His face is pleasant. That is the worst part about Mulciber. He always looks pleasant. "You've made this very difficult," he says, in a tone that suggests this is Peter's primary failure. The Dark Lord just wants to talk. Peter knows what the Dark Lord's talking looks like. He closes his eyes. The Patronus hits Mulciber from the side like a runaway carriage. It is enormous, fully formed, a stag the size of a draft horse, silver white and blazing, its antlers sweeping Mulciber off his feet and into the far wall of the alley with a sound like a sack of wet cement. Avery spins, wand up, and takes a stunner directly to the chest from a second caster. Precise, no wasted movement. The spell aimed with the casual confidence of someone who has done this 10,000 times in practice and several dozen times in earnest. Sirius Black lands in a crouch on top of the cellar door, his wand still raised, his dark hair plastered flat by the rain. He looks at Peter through the open door, and his expression cycles through several things in under a second. Relief, fury, something that is almost grief, and settles on a grin that does not reach his eyes. "There you are," Sirius says. James Potter drops from the wall above. He was on the bloody roof. Peter realizes he was on the roof the whole time, and lands beside Sirius in a puddle that sprays both of them. He is not grinning. He looks at Peter in the cellar. He looks at Avery and Mulciber, both down, both breathing. He looks back at Peter. "Can you walk?" James asks. "Yes," Peter says. His voice comes out smaller than he intends. "Then come on." They apparate to Godric's Hollow in 3 jumps, changing direction twice in the middle to break any trail. Standard Marauder protocol. James keeps one hand on Peter's arm the entire way, which Peter is aware is not strictly necessary for side-along apparition over these distances, and which James does not comment on. The cottage is warm, the kitchen smells of tea and something baked, and Lily is at the table when they come through the door, and she looks at Peter's face and immediately stands up, without asking any questions. "Sit down," she says. "I'll make tea." "Lily," Peter starts. "Sit down, Peter." He sits. The baby is asleep upstairs. The house is quiet except for the rain against the windows and the sound of the kettle. Sirius sits across from Peter with his arms folded and his jaw set. Remus, who must have been here already, leans in the doorway with his own mug, watching Peter with his careful reading eyes. James sits next to Peter and waits. It takes Peter 3 attempts to begin. When he finally does, he does not dress it up. He does not find ways to make himself sound less afraid, or less culpable, or less like a man who has been carrying a secret for 2 years, while the people he loves slept 12 miles away from the thing hunting them. He tells them everything: the legilimency pressure, the meetings, the 2 years of smaller betrayals, intelligence passed sideways, nothing critical, nothing that pointed directly here, but enough that he is not clean and has not been clean and knows it. The kitchen is very quiet when he finishes. He is looking at the table. He cannot look at James. He has not been able to look at James for the entirety of the confession, which took 11 minutes, and felt like 11 years. "Pete," James says. Peter looks up. James's face is not what he expected. It is not fury. It is not the cold disappointment that Peter has been rehearsing in his nightmares. It is something much harder to bear than either of those things. James Potter looks at him the way he looked at him in second year, when Peter failed his first transfiguration practical and cried in a broom cupboard for 20 minutes, and James found him and sat on the floor next to him, without being asked. "Why didn't you come to me?" James says. "The moment you were afraid." Peter opens his mouth, closes it. The answer is too large and too shameful to fit into words. "Because I thought you'd think less of me. Because I thought being afraid was the same as being a traitor. Because I have always believed, in the part of myself I cannot fix, that you would eventually find me inadequate. Because I was so frightened of losing you that I nearly gave you to him. I didn't want you to know how scared I was," Peter says. James nods once. "I know." He puts his hand on the back of Peter's neck, briefly, the way he did in second year. "You're an idiot. Yes, and we're going to fix this tonight." They work at the kitchen table until nearly 4 in the morning. The parchment is covered in Lily's precise handwriting, the Brotherhood Bond theoretical framework, cross-referenced against Fidelius charm mechanics in 2 separate texts she pulls from the shelf without looking. Remus annotates in the margins. Sirius argues one structural point for 17 minutes, and then concedes that Lily is right, which costs him visibly. The Brotherhood Bond, as Lily explains it, is a Fidelius extension, not hiding a location inside a soul, but distributing a secret across 4 souls simultaneously, each one a partial keeper, none of them the complete vessel. Voldemort's legilimency requires a single mind holding a single complete truth. Split across 4, the secret becomes noise. The Dark Lord could press on all 4 of them at once for a year and find only fragments that don't resolve. The solution for the Potter's own protection is separate and immediate, a new secret keeper, not drawn from the 4. "Dumbledore," Sirius says. He does not hesitate. James looks at him. "We've been too proud," Sirius says. "We thought we could keep it in the unit. We were wrong. Give it to the oldest, most powerful Occlumens in Britain, and take it out of the conversation entirely." He pauses. "I hate that I'm saying this, but I'm saying it. Lily is already writing the owl. The recasting of the Fidelius happens at dawn, Dumbledore present in traveling robes, with his silver hair loose and his expression grave. The spell worked in the kitchen, while Harry sleeps upstairs, unaware that the shape of his future is being rebuilt around him. When it settles, the magic draws in, on itself like a held breath released. The address is gone, not hidden, gone, scrubbed from the surface of every mind that is not Albus Dumbledore's. Peter stands outside after. In the early morning, the rain finally stopped. His hands are still. The shaking has not fully gone, but the specific tremor, the one that has lived in his right hand for 2 years, the one that came from carrying something he should have set down immediately, is quiet. He hears the door. James comes out and stands beside him. Neither of them speaks for a moment. Down the lane, a bird is starting. 3 weeks from now, James says, he'll come to wherever he thinks we are, and find nothing. A ghost. I know, Peter says. You saved them, Pete, by coming to me tonight. Whatever you think about the last 2 years, tonight you came. That's what I'll remember. Peter does not have an answer for that. He is not sure he deserves it. He is not sure it matters whether he deserves it. Then, a crack. Wrong angle, wrong apparition signature. The lane, 20 meters away. A Death Eater steps out of the dark, not Avery or Mulciber, someone else. Someone who tracked them from Hogsmeade on a longer delay. His wand is already up. The killing curse is already forming, green light pooling at the tip. And it is aimed at Peter, who is standing in the open, who left his wand on the kitchen table. James steps in front of him. The shield charm is not elegant. It is not the clean, theoretical construct from a defense textbook. It is everything James Potter has. Every year of war, every hour of practice, every morning he woke up choosing to protect the people he loved instead of leaving, poured into a single wall of force between Peter and the killing light. The killing curse hits the shield and does not pass. It cannot kill a shield charm, nothing can. But the blowback from the impact of an unforgivable against an anchored magical barrier is not nothing. It throws James backward 2 steps. A line of blood opens across his forehead from the concussive force, tracing a thin red mark from hairline to brow. The Death Eater, his spell spent, is 3 seconds away from a second cast. He doesn't get them. Sirius comes through the cottage door wand first, and the Death Eater goes down before he can raise his arm. It is over in a single second. Sirius is already kneeling over James, checking the injury with brisk, practiced hands, saying something quiet and sharp. Peter has not moved. He is standing where he was standing when James stepped in front of him. He is looking at the thin line of blood on James's forehead, at the man who put his body between Peter and death, at the man who has been doing this, in one form or another, since second year, stepping between Peter and the thing that would have broken him, without announcement, without conditions, without ever once asking for it back. James looks up at Peter from where Sirius has him sitting against the garden wall. His voice is steady. He is almost smiling. "Still alive, Wormtail," James says. "That's all that matters." Peter stands in the early morning outside the cottage at Godric's Hollow, the Fidelius newly recast, Voldemort's path to this door bricked shut at last, and he makes himself a promise, not a brave promise, not a hero's promise, a small, absolute, rat-shaped promise, that every choice he makes from this moment, every mission, every risk, every dark place he slips into in his animal form carrying information back to this family, will point to this alley, and to this man bleeding in the garden, who called him brother at his worst moment. He picks up the Death Eater's wand from the cobblestones and puts it in his pocket as evidence. Then he goes inside to make tea. Potter Manor does not exist. This is the official position of the British Ministry of Magic, the Hogwarts admissions register, and every property record in the wizarding and muggle cadastral systems. The land it occupies, somewhere in the rolling middle of England, behind a hill that muggles consistently find uninteresting and slightly difficult to remember, does not appear on any map. The Fidelius does not just hide the house. It persuades reality, gently and completely, that there is nothing here worth noticing. What is actually here is a Jacobean manor house with 16 rooms, a library of 4,000 volumes, a training courtyard paved in old stone, a map room on the ground floor whose walls are covered in a document the size of a snooker table, and a nursery on the second floor where for the first 3 years of the 1980s, 2 cribs sit side by side beneath a window that overlooks the invisible courtyard below. Harry James Potter, born July 1980, occupies the left crib. He is a compact, dark-haired child with enormous green eyes. Lily's eyes, everyone says every single time, as though James requires the reminder, and a scar on his forehead that has faded to a thin silver line, and that he is too young to have opinions about yet. He sleeps with his arms thrown wide, as though even in unconsciousness he is claiming as much space as possible. The right crib is empty until September 1985. But that is a later chapter. The manor in 1982 runs on a schedule that is equal parts military compound and chaotic family home, because these are the only 2 modes the marauders have ever known, and they are not capable of separating them. James rises at 5. He runs the perimeter, checks the ward boundaries at 7 specific anchor points Lily designed, and which require physical confirmation rather than magical scanning. Because magic can be fooled, Lily said, and your feet can't, and is back in the kitchen making eggs by 5:45. Lily is already at the table with her resonance map and a mug of tea that is always somehow both too hot and half finished, as though she pours it and forgets it exists the moment a problem appears. Sirius sleeps until 7, and then compensates by being loudest. Remus reads. He has always read. In the years at Hogwarts he read during meals and between classes, and in the dormitory after lights out with a Lumos cast so quietly it barely registered. At the manor he reads in the library, in the kitchen, On the training courtyard wall, and occasionally while walking, which has caused 3 documented collisions with door frames, and 1 incident involving a garden wall that Sirius considers the funniest thing he has ever witnessed. Peter is away. He is often away. This is the first fact Harry learns about the shape of the world, that Uncle Peter comes and goes, that sometimes he is a man in muddy clothes, eating everything in the kitchen and talking fast in a low voice to James, while Lily writes down what he says, and sometimes he is a small gray rat who sits on Harry's shoulder and twitches his whiskers at things, and is warm and real and entirely unbothered by the small fingers attempting to locate his ears. Harry treats this the way he treats most things about the Marauders, as simply how life is arranged. Age 2. Harry accidental magics his porridge across the kitchen ceiling with enough force that it sticks. James studies the ceiling for a moment and says, "That's more power than you put into Transfiguration at 7, Lily." Lily looks at her son with an expression that is mostly delighted and partially terrified. The porridge remains on the ceiling for a week before Sirius accidentally dislodges it while practicing a banishing charm. Age 3. The map room. Harry is not supposed to be in the map room unaccompanied. He is in the map room unaccompanied, standing on a chair, pressing his small hands flat against the vast parchment surface and watching the dots move. When Lily finds him, he looks at her and says, very seriously, "The dots." "Yes," Lily says, carefully. "They're people. Some of them." Harry considers this for a long time. "Are they bad people?" Lily lifts him off the chair and holds him. "Some of them. Are we going to stop them?" "Yes," she says. "That's exactly what we're going to do." Age 4. Remus reads them Hogwarts, a history in the library, both of them in the large armchair. Harry pressed against Remus's left side, not yet 4 years old and mostly interested in the pictures, which are few. He is asleep before Chapter 3. Remus keeps reading. Later, when Hermione can recite full passages from memory at age 6, Remus will realize this was where it started, that she absorbed the book in fragments, across 24 read-alouds, and assembled it internally with the quiet, inexorable thoroughness of someone building a wall, 1 stone at a time. Age 5. James begins the Marauder curriculum in the training courtyard. The first lesson is not a spell, it is footwork. "Never stand in one place longer than 3 seconds in a fight," James says, in the voice he uses when something is load-bearing. "A stationary target is a target. The moment you stop moving, you've made the other person's job easier. Move. Always move." Harry absorbs this with total seriousness and immediately trips over his own feet. Hermione, who has been at the manor for exactly 3 weeks and has already read the theoretical sections of every combat text in the library, executes the footwork pattern perfectly on the first attempt and waits, patient and slightly apologetic, for Harry to catch up. He makes her run it 17 more times, because he will not move past a thing he hasn't beaten. This is the first tactical data point. Harry does not stop until he has it. Hermione does not move on until she understands it. The difference is less important than the fact that they are, from the first week, calibrating to each other. Age 5. November. Sirius teaches them to fly. He does this in the invisible courtyard on 2 brooms he has charmed to limit their altitude to 12 feet, until further notice, which is Lily's condition and non-negotiable, and which Sirius respects entirely, except for the 4 occasions on which he does not. He stands below them on the courtyard stones, arms folded, and shouts instructions with a total lack of formal pedagogical structure and an instinctive understanding of exactly how much pressure each of them needs. "Harry," he pushes. "Faster, come on, you're treating it like a ride, not a tool. Lean into the turn." James could do this at 4, and Harry responds to being pushed by going faster. Hermione, he questions, "Why are you correcting for the crosswind with your grip instead of your body position?" And Hermione responds to questions by restructuring her entire approach in real time. Lily watches from the doorway with her arms crossed, and a grin she is categorically refusing to show. James stands beside her and watches their son bank a turn at speed, and says nothing but his hand finds hers on the doorframe. Age 6. Winter. Peter comes back from 8 weeks in rat form, moving through the lower levels of a Death Eater network operating out of the Scottish coast. He is thin. His hands are shaking with a different quality than the shaking of October 1981. Not fear-trembling, but cold, bone-deep cold, the kind that takes a day to leave. James feeds him and lets him talk and writes everything down. That evening, Harry climbs onto the armchair where Sirius is sitting with a bottle of butterbeer and Regulus's note in his hand. The note is creased from handling. Sirius has read it often enough that the folds are going soft at the edges. Sirius found Creature in 1982, 4 months after Voldemort failed to find the Potters, when the manor became the unit's permanent base, and Grimmauld Place became a secondary location maintained by irregular visits. Creature was in the attic, holding the locket, telling Regulus's story to no one, and everyone simultaneously in the way of house elves who have been holding grief for too long. Sirius heard the story in full. Remus sat with him through the night afterward, not speaking, just present, which is what Remus understands that grief requires. Now Sirius has the note and the locket lives in a warded case in the map room, and the map room wall carries a count. 1 circled in red. 1 confirmed Horcrux, the locket, untouched until they understand the magic. 6 to find. This is the work. Harry sits next to Sirius and does not know any of this yet. He puts his small hand on Sirius's arm because Sirius's face is doing the thing it does when he looks at the note, going somewhere far and quiet and not entirely there. Harry has seen this face enough times to understand that the correct response is not questions. It is wait, being present, being real. Sirius looks down at him. In Harry's face, the jawline, the dark hair, the precise angle of the nose, James is completely legible, his best friend's living continuation. 11 years old in 10 years. In 15 years, he will be unreasonable and brilliant and impossible to stop. And right now, he is 6 years old and putting his hand on Sirius's arm because he noticed. "I'm going to make sure he died for something," Sirius says. His voice is very quiet. Both of us are. Harry does not know who Regulus Black was. He knows the name from overheard conversations, from the notes Sirius sometimes reads, from the circled one on the map room wall. He knows it matters. He knows Sirius carries it. Both of us, Harry says. He means it as an agreement, not a promise. He is 6 years old. He does not have the context for promises of this size. Sirius takes a slow breath and nods. Once. Something in his shoulders settles, not resolved, not healed, but held by something living instead of something that is only grief. On the map room wall, the locket's resonance signature pulses its cold, dark frequency on Lily's map. 1 down, 6 to find. The war has a shape now, and the marauders, all 7 of them, including the 2 children who do not know yet what they are being built for, are already inside it. The accidental magic register at the Ministry of Magic is a document that nobody important reads. This is by design. The register exists in a sub-department of the Department of Magical Education, maintained by a rotating staff of 2 clerks, whose primary qualification is a tolerance for paperwork and a willingness to work in a basement. It records every instance of uncontrolled magic in Britain, every levitated toy, every spontaneously shattered window, every time a frightened child makes something happen that physics has no framework for. The register is cross-referenced quarterly against the Hogwarts admission scroll, which does its own tracking via Enchanted Quill, and the 2 documents are reconciled annually by a man named Weatherby, who has held the role since 1967, and who finds the whole enterprise deeply unexciting. Lily Potter finds it the single most important document in Britain. She has had a charmed intercept on the register's notification system since 1983. Every significant accidental magic event, classified as anything above a Category 2 on the Malfoy scale, which means anything beyond simple levitation or involuntary lumos, triggers a copy of the notification that arrives not in the basement of the Ministry, but on the desk in the Manor's map room, where Lily reads it before Weatherby does. The reason is simple, and has nothing to do with recruitment. Death Eater Muggle hunts, in the years since Voldemort's defeat, have shifted from organized military operations to opportunistic targeting, small cells, isolated events. The preferred targets are magical children in Muggle households, identified through Ministry records that are not as secure as they should be, because the Ministry in 1985 is still riddled with people who served 2 masters and have not yet been held to account for it. A child whose accidental magic flags on the register is, in the wrong hands, a child with a home address attached. Lily reads every notification. She has intercepted 11. 8 were straightforward, low-level events, low risk. A note passed through order contacts to keep watch. 2 required active intervention. Muggle families quietly relocated before anyone else arrived. The 11th notification stops her. She reads it once, standing at her desk in the map room, the morning light coming through the window at a low autumn angle. She reads it again. She sets it down, leaves the room, finds James in the training courtyard watching Harry and Hermione work footwork drills, and says, "Come and look at this." The file on Hermione Jean Granger, age 5, of Crawley, West Sussex, is not one incident. It is 19 incidents, logged over 6 months, each more precisely structured than the last. The first is a standard Category 2, spontaneous levitation of a cereal bowl at breakfast, attributed to emotional distress following a minor argument. Standard enough. The second is a Category 3, a wandless, wordless flame produced in the dark during a power cut to read by, self-sustaining for 40 minutes before it extinguished when the power returned. Lily stops at the second, a self-sustaining, wandless flame, controlled, extinguished deliberately by a 5-year-old. The remaining 17 incidents proceed in a line of ascending complexity that is not accidental magic in any normal sense of the term. This is a mind pressing against the walls of its own limits, and finding them further out each time. Incident 14, the library section. Hermione had apparently found her family's bookshelf incorrectly organized, and the Muggle parents' written account, attached, reads with the slightly stunned quality of people describing something they watched and still do not fully believe. The books sorted themselves, alphabetically by author. She was standing in front of the shelf with her hands out, and they just moved. "That's not accidental magic," Lily says to James, who is reading over her shoulder. "That's a mind that's already trying to control it." James is quiet for a moment. "How old?" 5. He exhales slowly. "Lily. I know. She's going to be. I know." The Grangers' home in Crawley is a neat semi-detached on a quiet street, the kind of house where the books are visibly loved and the kitchen table has papers on it that suggest people sit there to think. Emma Granger opens the door and immediately reads Lily, with the assessing intelligence of someone who has spent her career making diagnoses from insufficient information. She is not frightened, she is careful, which is different and more useful. Daniel Granger appears behind her, and is also not frightened, which Lily has found is characteristic of people whose daily professional reality involves the insides of other people's mouths, a certain baseline intimacy with things being not entirely as they should be. Lily does not open with bureaucratic language. She has thought, on the drive here, about how she would want someone to have spoken to her parents. She was 9. Severus Snape told her what she was, in a park, crouched behind a bush, with all the grace of a boy who had been holding the information for a year, and finally couldn't anymore. Her parents were told later, formally, by a ministry representative who used the phrase magical capability 11 times in 20 minutes and never once looked at her. She sits at the Grangers' kitchen table and says, "Your daughter is extraordinary. There are people in my world who would hurt her for it. I know that because I was her. I was exactly her, a Muggle-born child who showed too much too early, and no one protected me until I was 11. I want to protect Hermione now, before she needs protecting." Emma Granger looks at her for a long time. "Show me something," she says. "Not a challenge, evidence-based decision-making. Show me what you are, and then we'll talk." Lily produces a small flame on her palm, holds it, reshapes it into a spinning sphere, extinguishes it. Simple, clean, empirical. Dan Granger watches this and then says, "Right," in the tone of a man reorganizing his understanding of the world's operating parameters with minimal drama. "What exactly are you proposing?" The negotiation takes 2 hours, which is faster than Lily expected and slower than James, waiting in the car, had hoped. The Grangers' requirements are reasonable, professionally articulated, and entirely fair. Full disclosure of the threat level, ongoing communication, the right to remove Hermione from any arrangement at any time, and access to Lily directly rather than through intermediaries. Lily agrees to all 4 without hesitation. She was not planning to offer anything less. Hermione is brought into the conversation last. She has been in the next room the entire time, which Lily suspects means she heard every word through the door. When Emma calls her in, she enters with her hands clasped in front of her and the expression of someone who is performing calm, and is extremely good at it, except for the eyes, which are going everywhere at once. She looks at Lily and says, "You're a witch." "Yes." Lily says, "A real one. Not a Wiccan. Actually magic." "Yes." Hermione processes this for approximately 4 seconds. "My books sorted themselves. she says. I know, I read the report. There's a report? There's a register. The ministry tracks all significant magical events. Your file is the most interesting one I've read in 2 years. Hermione stands very still. Something in her shifts, not surprise, but recognition, the specific relief of a person who has been explaining themselves to walls for months and has suddenly found a door. Can you teach me? She asks. That, Lily says, is exactly what I came to offer. She is at the manor 4 days later. Lily gives her the tour, the library first, because it seems the correct priority and because watching Hermione's face in the doorway of 4,000 books is worth the detour. The girl stands on the threshold and does not move for a full 10 seconds. Her hands come up slightly at her sides, unconsciously, as though she needs to physically restrain herself from running at the shelves. You can use anything in here, Lily says. Hermione looks at her. Anything? The 3 restricted cases need supervision. Everything else, whenever you want. Hermione turns back to the library with the expression of someone who has just been handed the specific thing they have needed their entire life and is not quite sure how to hold it. The training courtyard is where Harry is. He is working a footwork pattern alone, the same one James taught them, and he is doing it well now. Smooth, no wasted steps, the marauder economy of motion starting to settle into his body. He stops when he sees her and looks at her with direct, serious green eyes. Hermione looks at the angle of his feet on the cobblestones. Your back foot is turned out too far, she says. You'll lose lateral acceleration on the right side brake. Harry stares at her. I read the theoretical section of the combat footwork chapter in Moody's field manual, she says. It's in the library, chapter 4. Harry looks at James, who is watching from the doorway with an expression he is doing absolutely nothing to conceal. James is grinning so broadly that it is reshaping his entire face. She's right, James says. She's been here 8 minutes and she's right. Harry looks back at Hermione for a moment. Then, show me the correct angle. She shows him. He adjusts, runs the pattern twice, corrects again on the 3rd pass. No argument, no ego, just the same relentless requirement for accuracy that she has. They run the pattern together for 20 minutes before either of them speaks again. That afternoon, in the library, Lily teaches Hermione her first deliberate spell. She hands her a wand borrowed from the manor's spare collection. 11 inches, vinewood, dragon heartstring, slightly over-responsive, which will be fine for a first lesson, and explains Wingardium Leviosa in full theoretical terms before demonstrating it, because she read Hermione correctly from the first minute and knows this is a girl who will perform better with the architecture of a thing than without it. Hermione listens with absolute focus, the kind of focus that means she is not just hearing the words, but filing them. Her eyes do not leave Lily's wand. She attempts it, the first try, nothing. She holds the wand too tightly. Lily shows her the correct grip pressure. The second try, the book lifts 2 inches and drops. The third try, the book rises to eye level, holds steady, rotates a quarter turn, and sets itself back down with precision. Lily puts the wand on the table. She lifts Hermione off the ground in a hug that is immediate and total. Both arms, no hesitation. Hermione makes a small sound of surprise, and then goes still, and then, slowly, her arms come up and hold on. She buries her face in Lily's shoulder and does not let go for a long time. She is 5 years old and she has been extraordinary in an empty room for 6 months, performing magic for an audience of no one, with no name for what she is, and no evidence that anyone would understand it. Welcome to the family, Lily says into her hair. The library is quiet around them. 4,000 books on their shelves. Harry in the courtyard below, running footwork drills. James's laughter audible somewhere in the house. Hermione holds on. The platform is noise and steam, and the specific organized chaos of 100 wizarding families trying to occupy the same space at the same moment. The Hogwarts Express sits along the platform like it always has, scarlet and gleaming, the engine turning slow, patient circles of white steam into the late summer air above King's Cross. Trunks are levitated. Owls protest from their cages. Somewhere near the front of the train, one of the Weasley boys has lost something, and the search effort is loud and escalating. Molly Weasley's voice carries over everything with the force of long practice. It is a normal September morning. Then the barrier ripples. It is not dramatic. It never is. From the magical side, The barrier between Platform 9 and Platform 9 3/4 accepts passage, the way a curtain accepts a hand. A brief distortion, a momentary resistance, and then the person is through. But what comes through the barrier at 10:47 on the morning of September the 1st, 1991 is not a family running slightly late or a nervous first year with an overloaded trolley. James Potter steps onto the platform first. He is wearing traveling clothes, dark, practical, unremarkable in every respect except for the way he moves through a space, which has always been the way of someone who is automatically reading exits and sight lines and the positions of everyone present. His hair is still terrible. His glasses are the same. He is 31 years old and thoroughly, completely, impossibly alive. The nearest cluster of families registers him in pieces. The face first, then the name that belongs to the face, then the inability for a moment to resolve the contradiction. Lily comes through behind him, her dark red hair caught back, her eyes moving over the platform with the same rapid professional sweep. Then Sirius, taller than people remember, sharper. 10 years free doing things to a man's bearing that Azkaban never got the chance to undo. Then Remus, quieter, a little gray at the temples, carrying a battered case that has seen better decades. Then Peter, small, silver-haired, slightly embarrassed by everything, Wormtail perches on his shoulder, out of old habit, then seems to reconsider and disappears into his pocket. The silence spreads backward through the crowd the way cold spreads through water, from the point of contact outward, slow and total. Conversations stop mid-sentence. Trunks are set down. A child somewhere asks a question that goes unanswered because the parent being asked has ceased to process new information. And ahead of all of them, already on the platform, already moving through the crowd with the calm of people who have been preparing for this moment for exactly as long as it required. 2 11-year-olds in matching traveling cloaks, side by side, reading the crowd's reaction with the assessing patience of intelligence analysts who expected this and allocated time for it. Harry Potter. The scar is visible. It is not dramatic, a thin silver line, faded, almost unremarkable. The face around it is James, entirely. James at 11, replicated without editorial, except for the eyes. The eyes are Lily's, and they are currently cataloging the platform the way Lily's eyes catalog everything, systematically, without sentimentality, missing nothing. Beside him, a girl with wild brown hair that is currently winning a structural argument with a leather clasp, sharp dark eyes, and a notebook already in her hand. She is not writing in it. She is holding it the way someone holds a tool they might need shortly. Her expression is pleasantly neutral, in the manner of someone who has prepared for most contingencies and is waiting to see which one arrives. Arthur Weasley finds his voice first, which is perhaps appropriate. James, he says. It comes out with the texture of a word he has not said aloud in 10 years, and is not certain he is permitted to say now. James Potter. James turns to him, smiles, the real one, not the platform awareness smile, and crosses the distance and shakes Arthur's hand with both of his. Arthur, it's good to see you. That is sufficient. Arthur Weasley grips his hand and nods several times and does not say anything else, because there is nothing else that needs to be said between two men who fought in the same war and who have, in this moment, found the accounting comes out better than expected. Molly Weasley does not shake hands. She takes one look at Lily Potter, alive, on the platform, and closes the distance and wraps her arms around her and makes a sound that has no language in it. Lily holds her back, both of them still for a moment in the middle of the moving crowd. James, released from Arthur, looks toward the far end of the platform. Lucius Malfoy has gone the specific shade of white that belongs to a man whose entire threat assessment of his own position has just been comprehensively revised. He is standing very straight, which is the only dignity available to him at this moment. Beside him, Draco, blonde, pressed, every inch the presentation of a boy raised to believe that his position in a room is never in question, has an expression that is doing complicated adolescent work to maintain itself. James looks at Lucius for exactly 2 seconds. Not a challenge, not a performance. Just the look of a man confirming that what he expected to find is there and can be noted and addressed in due course. Then he turns away. He does not need to do anything else. Lucius Malfoy will spend the entire train journey to Hogwarts understanding exactly what that look means. At the far end of the platform, standing alone, Albus Dumbledore watches Harry and Hermione, move through the crowd with an expression that requires a long time to identify. It is not surprise. Dumbledore is not a man who surprises cleanly. It is recalibration. It is the expression of a very old, very strategic mind examining a board it had arranged with great care, and discovering that two of the pieces have been making their own moves for a decade. There is relief in it, somewhere. Whether it outweighs the other things is harder to read. The compartment Ron Weasley chooses, third from the front, facing forward, which his mother said was better for the journey though he cannot remember why, is occupied when he slides the door open. Two children, both his age, sitting on opposite sides of the compartment. The girl has the notebook open now and is writing in it with a speed that suggests she has been thinking about this for some time, and the notebook is catching up. The boy is looking out the window at the platform, watching his parents on the receding Greystone, something in his face that is not quite wistfulness and not quite satisfaction. Ron stares. He has grown up hearing the story. Every wizarding child has grown up hearing the story. The Potters, Voldemort, Godric's Hollow, the night everything changed. His parents' voices going careful and grateful when the subject comes up, the way adults' voices do when they are describing something that still costs them to say. He knows the names. He knows the scar. He looks at the scar. Are you? Ron starts, stops, tries again. I mean, your dad is... That's James Potter out there. Still alive, yeah, Harry says, turning from the window. His voice is matter-of-fact, not dismissive, just accurate. There's a seat if you want. Ron sits, looks at the girl. She glances up from the notebook, assesses him in one pass, and offers a brief, precise smile. Hermione Granger. Ron Weasley. I know, Hermione says. Arthur Weasley's youngest son. Your father has been trying to get the Muggle Protection Act through the Wisengamot for 3 years. It keeps stalling in committee because of Malfoy's block, but that's going to change this term. She pauses. Your father doesn't know that yet, but it is. Ron opens his mouth, closes it, looks at Harry. She's always like this, Harry says. You get used to it. It's not always, Hermione says, returning to the notebook. I simply find it more efficient to establish relevant context at the outset. The train begins to move. The platform slides past the window, his mum waving, his dad with his arm around his mum's shoulders, the Potters standing together and watching the train go. Harry watches them until the platform bends out of sight. Ron tries once more. But both of you, your family's been... No one knew where you were, for 10 years. How did... Fidelius Charm, Harry says. New secret keeper. Voldemort found an empty house. Ron flinches at the name. Old reflex, Harry notices. He does not comment on it, but he notices. We've been working, Harry says. The whole time, my parents, my godfather, Remus, Peter. 10 years of intelligence. Every Death Eater still active, every Horcrux location, every compromised ministry official. He pauses. That's why we're here now. The work's almost done. Ron absorbs this in stages, like a man walking into cold water. What's a Horcrux? Hermione looks up. Hermione, Harry says. What percentage of the current Hogwarts student body do you think has a working understanding of Horcrux theory? Hermione taps her pen against the notebook, considering. At entry level, based on the curriculum and the Ministry's post-war suppression of advanced dark magic education? She pauses. None. Ron stares at them both. The countryside is opening up outside the window, London falling away, the sky getting wider and more honest. The train finds its speed. You're terrifying, he says. Neither of them disagrees. Back on the platform, emptying now, the last owls departing, the last families making their way back through the barrier, James stands with Lily and watches the scarlet train until it is a red point, and then nothing. Sirius appears beside him, puts his hands in his pockets. Think they'll be all right. They've been all right since they were 6, James says. I mean at school, without us. James thinks about his son running footwork drills alone at 5 in the morning before anyone else was awake, self-correcting, relentless. He thinks about Hermione rebuilding an entire theoretical framework on the fly because a question made her reassess. He thinks about the two of them in the map room at age 9, cross-referencing Peter's intelligence reports against Lily's resonance map and identifying a pattern that Sirius had missed. They'll be fine, he says. Peter, at his shoulder, watches the empty track. What about Quirrell? Harry already knows, Lily says. from James's other side. She has her arms folded, her face toward the gone train. He just doesn't know he knows yet. Give him a week. Sirius looks at her. A week? 2 at the outside. She picks up her bag. We should go. The ministry hearings start Thursday, and I want the files organized before then. She walks toward the barrier. James watches her go for a moment. This woman who intercepted a notification about a 5-year-old in Crawley because she checks every single one, who built a detection methodology from a single Horcrux sample, who has been 3 steps ahead of every threat for a decade. He follows her. On the empty platform, the last of the steam settles on the stone and disappears. The Sorting Hat has been doing this for 1,000 years. It has sorted the frightened and the proud and the cruel and the kind. It has sorted children who wept, and children who argued, and children who sat beneath it with the blank, cooperative expressions of people who have already accepted whatever it decides. It sorted Tom Riddle in 1938 and spent 43 seconds on the decision, longer than any other student that decade, a fact it has never forgotten, and reached the correct conclusion for entirely the wrong reasons, which is a failure it takes personally. It does not make that kind of mistake often. It is aware from the moment Harry Potter sits down in the chair that this will not be a long sorting. The hat touches his head. What it finds is not the warm, directionless mass of magical potential it encounters in most 11-year-olds, that soft, unformed brightness of a mind that has read some books and dreamed some dreams, and not yet been tested. What it finds is 10 years of deliberate construction, a mind that knows how to move under pressure, that has been taught to read a room and identify threats and catalog exits, that carries grief and gratitude and love with the matter-of-fact steadiness of someone who was never given the option of putting them down. There is courage here so deep it has become architecture. Gryffindor. The hat barely grazes his hair. The Gryffindor table erupts. The other tables applaud with varying degrees of enthusiasm. At the staff table, McGonagall's expression remains composed in the way that requires active effort. Dumbledore folds his hands and watches Harry take his seat with the air of a man watching a shape become clear. Hermione sits down second. The hat takes 73 seconds. It is not uncertainty. What the hat is doing, in those 73 seconds, is reading an argument, a genuinely interesting one, the kind it encounters perhaps twice a century. Ravenclaw presents the most obvious case. This is a mind of extraordinary precision and depth, a girl who has read Hogwarts, a history twice, who has the complete Peverell runic alphabet memorized, who identified the theoretical flaw in a standard shield charm modification at age 9, and wrote a 12-page annotation that Remus Lupin described as disconcertingly correct. Hufflepuff has a quiet counter-argument. The loyalty in this girl runs to the bone, and her commitment to fairness is not an abstract principle but a lived practice. Slytherin notes, not incorrectly, that she plans 17 steps ahead and executes without sentiment. But underneath all of it, underneath the precision and the loyalty and the strategy, courage, not the bright, reckless courage of someone who hasn't calculated the risk, the harder kind, the courage of a person who has calculated the risk exactly, knows the cost precisely, and does the thing anyway. The hat leans in, speaks quietly into her ear. Every house would have been a fortress with you in it. Then, aloud, Gryffindor. Hermione takes her seat next to Harry. He looks at her. She looks at him. She opens her notebook to a fresh page. Quirrell, she says quietly. I know, Harry says. The Occlumency Resistance. He flinched during the candle demonstration in the anteroom. Flinched away from direct eye contact, not toward it. That's not nervousness, my scar, Harry says. Every time I'm within 4 meters of him. Hermione writes something down. I'll draft the report tonight. Across the hall, Professor Quirrell is applauding the new students with everyone else. His smile is exactly the right size. The defense class is held on Thursdays. In the 3rd week of term, Quirrell, whose stutter comes and goes with a consistency that Hermione has already documented as correlating with emotional state rather than genuine speech impediment, attempts a demonstration duel with a volunteer from the 3rd row. Harry does not volunteer. He is called upon. He stands at the front of the classroom opposite Quirrell, in the approved dueling stance, wand raised, feet at the marauder-trained 45-degree angle, weight distributed for lateral movement. The class watches. Several students are already uncertain what they are about to observe. Based on the preceding 2 weeks of classes in which Harry Potter has answered every question correctly, on the first attempt and demonstrated wand work that has caused Quirrell's stutter to worsen noticeably. Quirrell says, "On 3, 1, 2. Harry disarms him on 2. The wand clears Quirrell's hand and snaps to Harry's left palm without drama. Harry holds it out, handle first, for Quirrell to take back. The classroom is entirely still. Quirrell retrieves his wand with a smile that has to cross a lot of distance to reach his eyes. "Very good, Mr. Potter." Perhaps Harry's right hand moves before the sentence finishes. The wand requisition attempt, a subtle reach, a practiced reflex, the kind of counter that only makes sense if you've been in actual combat, is stopped by Harry's forearm against Quirrell's wrist. Gentle, firm, definitive. "I have a question," Harry says, in a tone that is purely academic. "The protego maxima modification in Chapter 3, the one that redirects rather than absorbs. It requires a secondary intent anchor to avoid blowback. The textbook doesn't explain why. Could you?" Quirrell stares at him. The class waits. Somewhere in the room, from the direction of Hermione Granger, there is the precise, controlled sound of someone biting the inside of their cheek very hard. Quirrell provides the explanation. It is technically adequate and personally costly. Harry nods, thanks him, and returns to his seat. Transfiguration. Week 4. McGonagall sets the class a beetle-to-button exercise. Standard first-year material. She demonstrates once with the clean, economical precision of a woman who has done this 10,000 times, and considers it approximately as challenging as making tea. Hermione watches the demonstration with her hands flat on the desk, which is what she does when she is already several steps ahead and is waiting for the instruction to catch up. McGonagall says, "Begin." The class bends over their beetles with varying degrees of confidence. Hermione performs the beetle-to-button in 3 seconds and sits back. McGonagall examines the button. She says nothing for a moment. She picks it up, holds it to the light. It is a perfect button. The transfiguration is total, clean, without the slightly rough edges that indicate partial completion. The kind of result that takes most students 3 weeks to achieve, and which Newt students are expected to produce consistently only in their 6th year. McGonagall sets it down. She looks at Hermione over her glasses with the expression of a woman who has been teaching for 40 years and has a refined capacity for controlling her reactions. "Miss Granger," she says. "Yes, Professor." A pause. 7 words, chosen with evident care. "Don't make it look easy." She moves on to the next student. Hermione writes something in her notebook. Harry, without looking up from his own beetle, reaches across the desk and briefly taps his knuckle against the back of her hand. Good. She does not acknowledge it, but the pen moves faster. Potions is Snape's. Every first-year Gryffindor has been told, in varying degrees of specificity, what potions is. It is Snape's class. It is cold. He will ask questions designed to demonstrate ignorance, and if you are a Gryffindor, you will demonstrate ignorance on schedule. This is understood. Snape begins the first lesson with the standard performance. The quiet entrance, the measured walk, the voice calibrated to fill a dungeon without effort. He looks along the Gryffindor side of the room until he finds Harry, and then, without inflection, begins. "Potter, what would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood? Draught of living death," Harry says. "One of the most powerful sleeping potions known to exist. The combination works because the asphodel's sulfurous compounds interact with wormwood's bitter alkaloids to produce a depressive magical effect on the central nervous system that standard Renervate cannot immediately counter. You need a specific reversing agent prepared in advance, which is why it's classified as a controlled preparation under the 1976 Potions Regulation Act." Silence. "Where," Snap says, "would you look if I told you to find me a bizarre? Stomach of a goat. More specifically, a calcified mass formed from the mineral deposits in undigested plant matter. Effective against most common poisons because its calcium compounds bind to toxin molecules before absorption. Not effective against Veritaserum or Amortentia, which work through a different." "What," Snape says, "is the difference between monkshood and wolfsbane?" "They're the same plant," Harry says, "also called aconite. You know that, Professor. We know that. I think the question is whether I know it." A pause, precise and respectful. "I know it. The dungeon is very quiet." Harry looks at Snape with his mother's eyes and says, "My mother sends her regards. She said to tell you she found your margin notes in her sixth-year potions textbook. She kept it. He lets that settle for exactly 1 second. She said they were mostly right. Something crosses Snape's face that has no clean name. It moves through too many registers too quickly. Startlement, grief, pride, fury, something that might in different lighting resemble gratitude, and is gone before it can be identified. What replaces it is the smooth, controlled mask, the classroom default. He turns to the blackboard. "Begin your notes on the Boil Cure Potion," he says. Page 10. In the front row, Hermione Granger bites her cheek so hard she will have a mark there the next morning. She does not make a sound. This, Harry will tell her later, is possibly the most impressive thing she has ever done. Draco Malfoy selects a Thursday, the 5th week of term. He finds them in the corridor between the library and the east staircase, which is quiet in the late afternoon, and which he has presumably calculated as offering the necessary privacy for the speech he has prepared. Crabbe and Goyle form up behind him, with the architectural reliability of people whose primary function is width. Draco begins. He is not without intelligence. Harry has noted this, and filed it, and the speech is structured. The pure-blood hierarchy, the natural order of wizarding society, the specific irregularity of a muggle-born occupying space in a world she was not born to. Harry listens to the whole thing. Hermione, beside him, has her arms folded and her expression set to the specific neutral she uses when she is letting someone finish before she responds, which is a courtesy she extends even when it is not deserved. When Draco finishes, Harry says, "Draco, your father's name has been on the map room wall for 8 years. We have his financial holdings, his Death Eater rank in the First War, and the precise location of 3 Muggle families he has been targeting since 1987. He pauses. "The moment we walked through that barrier on September the 1st, your father's protection ended. The hearings start in January. Draco's color leaves his face with the completeness of a tide going out. Have a good term," Hermione adds pleasantly. They walk away. Behind them, in the corridor, Crabbe and Goyle look at each other, and then at Draco. He is staring at the stone floor. Whatever he expected from this conversation, the accounting has come out wrong in every column. McGonagall calls Harry aside after Transfiguration in the 6th week, when the rest of the class has filed out and the room is quiet. She stands at the front, straight-backed, hands folded, in the posture of a woman choosing her words with the precision she brings to her spell work. "Mr. Potter," she says, "I taught your father Transfiguration for 7 years. Harry waits. He was exceptional," she says. The word costs her something. Not much, but something. He was also, in the parlance of his generation, insufferably smug about it. She looks at Harry over her glasses. "You are not smug. I find this disconcerting." Harry almost says something. He stops. "You are also exceptional," she says. "Both of you. What you are doing in my classroom should not be possible at your age." She holds his gaze. "Your father would be unbearably smug about this." Something in Harry's chest requires a moment to settle. He looks at the ceiling, briefly, the stone vaulting, the torchlight. The way it all looks golden in the late afternoon, ancient and solid and exactly where it has always been. "Thank you, Professor," he says. His voice is steady. McGonagall nods once, turns back to her desk, and in doing so grants him the privacy of not being watched while he recollects himself. He walks out into the corridor, where Hermione is waiting with her notebook, and an expression that says she heard McGonagall's tone through the door, and drew the correct conclusion, and is giving him a moment before she says anything. He reaches the corridor, stands next to her. They walk. "Right," she says after a suitable interval. "The Quirrell report. I want to send it tonight." "Tonight," Harry agrees. They walk toward the owlery, side by side in the long stone corridor, the torches burning in their brackets the way they have for 1,000 years. The owl arrives at breakfast on a Tuesday. Harry sees it before Hermione does. A gray manor owl, unremarkable, one of 6 rotating birds James uses for correspondence that requires discretion. It lands between their plates with the practiced efficiency of an animal that has been making this journey since Harry was old enough to send replies. He unties the note with one hand, tucks it below the table edge, reads it. 4 words in James's handwriting. Peter's back. Window open. Harry folds the note, pockets it, and looks at Hermione. She is already watching him with her tea halfway to her mouth, and her eyes doing the rapid cataloging thing. "Tonight?" she asks. "Tonight." Across the hall, at the staff table, Professor Quirrell is eating porridge with the mechanical regularity of a man maintaining a performance he finds increasingly effortful. His turban is slightly askew. Harry's scar has been producing a low, dull ache for 3 days. Not sharp, not sudden, but persistent, the way a bruise aches when you press it. He stopped mentioning it to Hermione in October because she was already tracking it and the data points weren't changing the conclusion. They had reached the conclusion in week 2. The report they sent to James on September the 14th was 6 pages, Quirrell's symptomatic profile, the scar proximity correlation mapped against classroom seating charts, cross-referenced against the ministry's Legilimency symptom register that Lily had included in their pre-Hogwarts briefing materials. James read it at breakfast, passed it to Lily, and said to Peter, "They're better than we were at their age." Lily looked at the scar proximity data. "They're better than we are now." Peter, who had been chewing toast, said nothing, but the look on his face was the specific look of a man who spent a decade helping build something and has just seen it work. The window, the note references, is not metaphorical. It is a narrow tactical gap in Lucius Malfoy's schedule, a ministry audit requiring his personal attendance at the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, filed by James Potter that morning under the Controlled Dark Artifacts Act, citing 5 specific items from the Manor's confirmed inventory. The audit is legal, properly filed, and requires Malfoy's physical presence for 6 hours minimum. Peter has been inside Malfoy Manor 11 times. He knows the study on the 2nd floor, the locked cabinet against the south wall, 3rd shelf between a collection of jinxed pocket watches and a box of correspondence Lucius has been meaning to destroy for 4 years. He knows the exact shelf because he spent 40 minutes in rat form memorizing it on his 7th visit, when the diary's dark resonance signature registered even through his animal senses as something deeply wrongly cold. He knows the 11-minute extraction window. The operation runs at 2 in the afternoon on a Wednesday. James files the audit request at 9. The Ministry Owl reaches Malfoy Manor by 10. Lucius departs at noon, visibly furious in the controlled way of a man who cannot refuse without drawing worse scrutiny. His absence is confirmed by Peter, already in position since 7 that morning, riding in on a supply cart without anyone on it looking at the gray rat near the wheel housing. At 12:43, Sirius and James maintain positions in Diagon Alley, visible, documented, having lunch at the Leaky Cauldron in case anyone requires their whereabouts. This is Lily's instruction. If anything goes wrong, their alibi is a receipt and 3 witnesses. Peter moves at 12:45. He knows the route from the kitchen to the study, 38 seconds in rat form along the east wall, through the gap under the study door, across the floor to the cabinet. The cabinet is locked with a standard colloportus and a secondary ward Lily identified as a variation of a Muggle intrusion deterrent, pressure-sensitive, tuned to human magical signatures, not rat signatures. The lock is the problem. Peter solves it the way he has solved every problem in 10 years of deep cover. He does not solve it himself. 3 months ago, on visit 9, he memorized the wand movement Lucius uses to open it. He has been practicing the motion in human form every night since, in the dark of whatever safe house he is using, until the muscle memory is independent of thought. He transforms. Opens the cabinet on the first try. The diary is on the 3rd shelf. Small, black, the year TM riddle embossed on the cover. And from it, even in rat form, even from 4 inches away, something that registers not as smell or sound, but as a quality of wrongness. An absence shaped like presence. Cold the way dead things are cold. He takes it. He leaves the decoy, a journal Lily charmed to read as magically inert, identical in physical dimensions, placed in an evidence bag for 3 days, to absorb the ambient magical signature of the Manor's general artifact collection before being switched. He is out of the building in 11 minutes and 14 seconds. James destroys the diary that evening in the map room. Lily had sourced the basilisk venom 18 months earlier through a controlled ministry specimen, a legal requisition filed under Potions Research and approved without scrutiny because the requisition was for a quantity consistent with academic study and because no one in the approving department cross-referenced it against the Potter's known areas of investigation. The venom is stored in a sealed glass ampule in the map room's locked case, next to the locket. Peter holds the diary open on the stone table. James punctures the ampule with a long silver pin and lets 1 drop fall onto the cover. What happens next takes 4 seconds. The venom spreads across the black cover in a branching pattern, eating through the material with a speed that is physical and absolute, and entirely without sound, until the sound arrives. Not from the room. From inside the diary, a shriek that has no throat behind it, high and sustained and retreating, the way a radio station sounds when you drive away from its tower. Something diminishing, something that was anchored becoming unanchored. The resonance map on the wall flickers. One of the signals, the small dark frequency Lily identified in 1982 as a soul fragment signature, the one labeled in her precise handwriting, diary, Malfoy Manor, confirmed, goes cold. Not dim. Cold. The difference matters. Dim would mean diminished. Cold means extinguished. Peter sets the diary down. He is very still, the flinch in his shoulders, the one that arrived in second year at Hogwarts when the fear of Voldemort first became something physical. When he first understood what the Dark Lord was, and what it cost to be near him, has been getting smaller for 10 years. Every mission completed. Every piece of intelligence delivered. Every time he chose to stay and was not broken, the flinch got smaller. Right now, holding a diary that contains the extinguished fragment of the soul that built him into a coward, it is gone. He stands up straight. 1, he says. James marks it on the wall, a line through the diary entry, a number in the tally column, 1 confirmed destroyed. Sirius pours 4 measures of something amber into 4 glasses, without being asked. Christmas break. The Hogwarts Express deposits its students at King's Cross on the 23rd of December, and Harry and Hermione step onto the platform carrying their trunks, and one piece of information neither of them has shared with the other students. They are not going home for the holiday. They are going to Little Hangleton. The briefing was conducted at the Manor on the 1st of December. James, Lily, the whole unit, Harry and Hermione at the far end of the table in the seats they have occupied at briefings since they were 9, the Gaunt Shack, Lily's resonance map identifying a cold, dead magic cluster in a field outside the village for 4 years, consistent with a soul fragment signature, dormant, no active anchoring. The ring. This is your first field extraction, Lily said. She looked at both of them. Not a training exercise, a real target. Hermione had already read the file twice. The curse on the ring, the embedded death trap. It's structured like a killing curse, with a contact trigger. Marvolo Gaunt's ring has the resurrection stone set into it, which is why the curse is death-specific. Whoever designed it expected a Horcrux hunter to grab it. Which means we don't grab it, Harry said. We extract it with a levitation charm from a safe distance, put it in a ward glass, and bring it back for proper analysis before any destruction attempt. She looked at Lily. The Sword of Gryffindor is the correct destruction method, based on the goblin-forged metal principle. Do we have access? Lily smiled. Working on it. Little Hangleton is empty on Christmas Eve. The village keeps its curtains drawn in winter, which is exactly what they need. The lane to the Gaunt Shack is rutted and frozen, the hedgerows bare, the sky that flat gray that comes before snow. Harry and Hermione move in full invisibility cloak cover. The true cloak, the Peverell heirloom, large enough to cover both of them at 11, with room for adjustment. The shack is a structural argument that decay has been winning for decades. The door is gone. The floor is earth. The roof is more ambition than architecture. In the dead center of the room, under 6 inches of soil that is somehow colder than the surrounding ground, Hermione identified the spot with Lily's compact resonance detector. In under 2 minutes, is the ring. Hermione casts Accio with a precise directional intent that lifts the ring without touching it, suspending it in midair at eye level, where it rotates slowly. Gold band, black stone, the Peverell Hallows sigil carved into the face. And from it, the same quality of wrongness as the diary, the same dead cold resonance, but layered. The curse is visible to Lily's detector as a dark seam running through the stone's magical structure, wound tight, waiting. Harry looks at it, the Peverell sigil, the same sigil on his own ring, the one Bloodclaw placed on his hand in Gringotts, the one he has been wearing for 3 months. The same triangle, circle line. Resurrection stone, he says. Yes, that's my family's symbol. Yes. He looks at the ring for a long moment, at the history in it and the horror in it, and the specific ugliness of something ancient and belonging to his bloodline, hollowed out and weaponized by a man who understood power as extraction. Bag it, he says. Hermione lowers it into the ward glass without it touching either of them. The glass seals. The The resonance detector's signal changes from active hostile to contained dormant. She holds it up. In the gray winter light of the ruined shack, the ring inside its glass looks small and cold, and exactly as defeated as it should. 2, Harry says. Hermione tucks the ward glass into her bag, checks the seal twice, and turns toward the door. We should be back before dinner, she says. Your mother is making something. I know. The ghost of something warm in her voice, brief and real. I know she is. They walked back up the frozen lane, invisible, side by side, 2 11-year-olds carrying a Horcrux in a school bag through an empty village on Christmas Eve, and above them the flat gray sky finally delivers on its promise, and it begins to snow. The wizarding world learns that James and Lily Potter are alive the way it learns most things that matter, all at once, badly, and with insufficient preparation. The ministry notification goes out on the 2nd of January. It is a formal document, dry and procedural, the kind of language designed to transmit information without acknowledging its weight. It informs the relevant departments that James Charles Potter and Lily Jane Potter, née Evans, have formally re-entered public record following a decade of Fidelius-protected residence. It notes that they are accompanied by Sirius Black, cleared of all prior charges. There were no charges, because there was no crime, because there was no betrayal, because Peter Pettigrew is alive and present and willing to testify to this in writing, under veritaserum, in front of as many people as required. The notification reaches Cornelius Fudge's office at 8 in the morning. Fudge reads it over his breakfast and sets it down and picks it up and reads it again. His senior aide, who has been watching him from the doorway, says, "Carefully, Minister." Fudge looks at the document. He looks at the pile of correspondence on his desk. 10 years of correspondence from the Malfoy family, from the Knott family, from the Avery estate, from a dozen sources whose generosity to his campaign was premised on a specific arrangement. An arrangement that required the Potters to remain wherever they were, which was anywhere that was not here. In public, with documentation. "Get me Umbridge," Fudge says. His aide does not move. "Sir, there's a second document." He sets it on the desk, filed simultaneously. It's from Gringotts. It is a formal legal notice, comprehensive, 73 pages, cross-indexed and cited, representing 10 years of intelligence compiled by Peter Pettigrew in the field and organized by Lily Potter in the map room, naming 41 individuals currently holding ministry positions who actively served Voldemort or materially supported his regime and have not been prosecuted. 41 names with dates and specific offenses and evidence attachments. The first name on the list is Lucius Malfoy. The 41st is a man 3 doors down the hall from Fudge's office. Fudge sits at his desk for a very long time without speaking. James Potter calls no press conference. He does not write to the prophet. He does not give statements. He walks into the Wizengamot chamber on the 14th of January in plain dark robes, with Sirius Black on his left and Lily on his right, and Peter behind them. And he sits in the Potter hereditary seat, vacant for a decade, maintained out of legal obligation by a clerk who dusted it quarterly and found the whole situation faintly melancholy, and he waits for the session to begin. The chamber is full. It is not usually full for a January session. January sessions are administrative, budget reviews, regulatory renewals, the procedural machinery of magical governance grinding through its necessary rotations. Nobody attends January sessions who does not have to. Every seat is occupied. The gallery is standing. Sirius Black takes the black hereditary seat beside James, and the political arithmetic of the room changes immediately and visibly. The noble and most ancient house of Black has not had an active, seated representative in 11 years. Sirius sits in the chair like he was built for it, which he was not. He was built to be a disappointment to everyone who designed the chair, and folds his hands on the table with a composure that Remus, watching from the gallery, recognizes as costing him significantly. The chief warlock calls the session to order. James stands. He speaks for 18 minutes. He does not use notes. The intelligence files, 73 pages, 41 names, have already been distributed to every Wizengamot member, delivered by Gringotts Owl at 6 that morning. Impossible to claim non-receipt. James does not summarize them. He does not dramatize. He says what the files contain and what he is asking for. Formal trials under veritaserum in open session. Every name on the list, starting with Lucius Malfoy. The silence after he sits down lasts long enough to hear the torches. Then the chamber votes on whether to proceed. The vote is not close. Lucius Malfoy's trial is scheduled for the 3rd of February. He arrives with 3 solicitors, a written statement, and the bearing of a man who has survived every previous attempt to hold him to account, and expects this one to proceed similarly. He is well dressed. His cane is a prop he deploys with practiced ease. He takes his seat in the chair in the center of the chamber's floor, and looks at the assembled Wizengamot with the equanimity of a man who owns several of the people looking back at him. Veritaserum is administered by a healer from St. Mungo's, 3 drops. Standard protocol, the first question is the simple 1. Did Lucius Abraxas Malfoy take the dark mark and swear allegiance to Lord Voldemort? Yes, Lucius says, in the flat, distant voice of a man who is watching himself speak from somewhere he cannot intervene. The gallery does not make a sound. They were expecting it. They were not prepared for the weight of it, said plainly in daylight, in a room full of people who are hearing it confirmed rather than suspected. The questioning takes 4 hours. James does not conduct it. He sits in his seat and watches. The questioning is conducted by Amelia Bones, who has been preparing it for 6 weeks and who brings to the task the specific, organized thoroughness of a woman who has been waiting most of her professional career for a room in which this kind of truth-telling is mandatory. She works through the list chronologically. The Muggle families, the Order members, the obstructions of justice, the financial arrangements with ministry officials, the specific meeting on a specific night in 1981 in which Lucius Malfoy was briefed on the location of 3 Order safe houses and confirmed 2 of them. Lucius answers every question. When it is done, the chamber is very still. Not the silence of shock. Most of what was said was known, or suspected, or the kind of thing you looked away from deliberately because looking at it directly required you to respond. This silence has a different quality. It is the silence of a room full of people who have just been denied the option of looking away. The sentencing is formal and swift. Lucius Malfoy's ministry connections are severed by order of the Chief Warlock. His seat on the Hogwarts Board of Governors is stripped. His assets are audited. He is fined to near ruin, the specific amount calculated to leave him with enough to survive on, and not a galleon more. A Wizengamot seat he held through a hereditary technicality is dissolved. He is escorted from the chamber by 2 Aurors. His cane stays on the floor where he dropped it. James watches him go. He does not look satisfied. He looks like a man who has crossed something off a list, which is different. Cornelius Fudge lasts until the 5th of March. James does not enjoy this conversation. He finds Fudge, if he is honest with himself, more pitiable than contemptible. A small man whose fundamental instinct was always self-preservation, who encountered a war and made calculations about which side's victory would cost him less, and whose calculations have been running unpaid debts ever since. There is nothing noble about Fudge's corruption. It is petty and frightened and entirely consistent. He meets him in the minister's office on a Tuesday morning. Just the 2 of them. James sets the file on the desk between them. 12 pages, the campaign contributions, the protection arrangements, the specific requests made and granted through intermediaries who have already testified. He lets Fudge read it. He waits. Fudge sets the file down. He looks older than he did in January. The past 2 months have been doing visible work on him. "What are you asking?" Fudge says. "Nothing dramatic," James says. "Resign. Issue a statement citing personal reasons. Cooperate fully with the transition process." He pauses. The alternative is that these 12 pages become the opening document of a Wizengamot inquiry, in which case you sit in that chair in the chamber, under Veritaserum, in front of a gallery. Fudge looks at the file for a long time. "And if I resign?" The file stays with Gringotts, sealed. "You are not prosecuted. You live quietly." He meets Fudge's eyes. "We are not trying to destroy you. We are trying to remove you from a position you have been using to protect people who deserve to be prosecuted. Those are different objectives." Fudge is quiet. "Then, who takes the position?" "Amelia Bones," James says. "She's been doing the actual work for a decade anyway." Fudge makes a sound that might, in softer lighting, be described as a laugh. He opens his desk drawer and takes out a sheet of ministry letterhead. He begins to write. The confirmation of Amelia Bones as Minister for Magic passes the Wizengamot on the 1st of April. The vote 39-4, the 4 being people whose own files are currently in preparation for their own Tuesdays. Easter comes. Hogwarts empties for the break. Hermione goes home to Oxford. which now means the Granger house plus 3 warded perimeter charms maintained by Lily and checked weekly by Peter, whose rat form has done a full circuit of the Granger street, so many times he knows every cat in a 6-garden radius by movement pattern. She sits at the kitchen table with her parents on a Thursday evening, the fire going, the April rain on the windows. She tells them about the trials, the Veritaserum, Lucius Malfoy's cane on the chamber floor, Fudge's resignation letter, the 41 names, and how many of them have now been addressed. Dan Granger listens without interrupting, which is his mode for things that require the full allocation of his attention. He has been listening this way for 7 years, to everything Hermione brings home from the magical world. Every briefing and mission debrief and Hogwarts letter, with the careful, steady attention of a man determined to understand the world his daughter lives in, even when it costs him sleep. When she finishes, he is quiet for a moment. He sets down his tea. His hands are flat on the table. The Muggle families, he says. The ones who were hunted. The ones on Malfoy's list. His voice is very even. They've been identified. The people responsible have been... There are consequences. Yes, Hermione says. Every case that Malfoy testified to, Bones is personally overseeing the prosecutions. Dan is still. Then, quietly, good. A breath. That's good. He does not say anything else for a moment. Emma puts her hand over his on the table. Outside, the rain comes down in the dark over Oxford, and inside the kitchen, it is warm and lit, and exactly as it should be. Hermione reaches across and puts her hand over her father's. He turns his hand over and holds it. The war has been running for 11 years. For most of those years it ran in the dark, in map rooms and rat form infiltrations and charmed intercepts, and a tally on a wall that grew 1 mark at a time. It ran in the spaces between normal life, in the hours before dawn, in the specific courage of people who chose to keep going when there was no guarantee that keeping going would be enough. It is running into light now, slowly, 1 name at a time, 1 room at a time. Hermione holds her father's hand in their kitchen in Oxford, and the fire goes on burning, and it is enough. The first petrification happens on a Wednesday in November. Mrs. Norris is found at the entrance to the 2nd-floor corridor, rigid, eyes wide and white, her breathing reduced to something shallow and mechanical that is not quite death, but is not anything comfortable. Filch finds her at 11 at night, and the sound he makes carries through 3 corridors and brings half of Gryffindor Tower to the landing above the great staircase to look down. Harry and Hermione are not among them. They are already on the 2nd floor, because Hermione heard the echo of something large moving in the walls 6 minutes before Filch's cry, and she grabbed Harry's arm in the dark common room and said, "Pipes." He was dressed and moving before she finished the word. They do not find the source. What they find is the aftermath, the message on the wall, written in something dark, and Mrs. Norris below it, and the specific quality of the stillness around the cat that registers to Harry is familiar. He has felt it before, twice, once near Quirrell and once in the gaunt shack, the cold, structured wrongness of something that belongs to Voldemort. Hermione photographs the message in her notebook, a quick, precise sketch, every letter exact, and they are back in the dormitories before Filch's voice has finished carrying. The owl to James goes out at 6 the next morning. The Marauder Protocol activates by the following Monday. Remus Lupin is appointed Defense Against the Dark Arts professor, with a speed that the Hogwarts Board of Governors finds slightly startling, and which James achieves through a combination of Amelia Bones's ministerial authority, 2 phone calls, and a written recommendation from Dumbledore that Dumbledore provided without being asked, because he has been following events since January with the focused attention of a man recalibrating in real time. The appointment is controversial. Remus does not pretend otherwise. He stands in front of his first class, 3rd years, mixed houses, 31 students who have heard the word werewolf in the corridor already, and he does not open with a lesson. He opens with a fact. "I am a werewolf," he says. "I have been since I was 4 years old. I take wolfsbane potion monthly, which means I retain my human mind during the transformation and pose no threat to anyone in this building." The Ministry's current classification of werewolves as beings rather than beasts, meaning we have full legal status, was revised in June of this year, in part because of work done by Sirius Black and the Wiesengamot. He looks at them. "I mention this not for sympathy, but for accuracy. I am your professor. The condition is managed. If you have questions about the subject itself, ask them. I will answer honestly. If you cannot accept the premise, That is a bias you are welcome to bring to Professor McGonagall for reassignment. No one requests reassignment. Harry and Hermione's curriculum changes immediately. Standard classes continue. They have never stopped being thorough about standard classes, because Hermione considers below excellence a form of carelessness, and Harry has absorbed this position through proximity. But 3 afternoons a week they work directly with Remus in the defense classroom, after hours. The Marauder Intelligence Network feeds information to Remus, who feeds it to them, who run it against what they observe inside the castle. The petrifications continue. Colin Creevey, Justin Finch Fletchley, nearly headless Nick, each instance mapped by Hermione onto a diagram of the castle she has been building since September, tracking the incidents against pipe locations, drainage routes, and the specific layout of the plumbing system that the Hogwarts A History appendices describe in more detail than most students ever read. By December, she has a map that converges on a single point: the girls' bathroom on the 2nd floor, Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. The entrance to something the castle's original architectural documents, which Remus retrieved from the library's restricted section for them, describe only as a sub-level chamber, original construction, founder era, access restricted. Chamber, Harry says, looking at the map. Of secrets, Hermione finishes. The snake incident happens in defense class in January. Remus brings in a small garden snake for a demonstration on non-aggressive magical creature interaction, which is entirely planned, including the part where Harry speaks to it. It is the delivery that Remus has thought carefully about, not the revelation. Harry told James about the parcel tongue at age 8, when he first noticed he could hear the manor's resident grass snake communicating in something he understood. James had sat with that information for a day, and then brought in Remus and Lily, and the 4 of them discussed it at the kitchen table while Harry ate his dinner in the other room. And by the time they called him back in, they had a framework. The gift is ancient, it is inherited, it is neutral, and it will be heard differently by different people, and the time to explain it is before it surprises anyone. Remus waits until he has taught the class 3 weeks of snake behavior and general serpent magical interaction theory. Then he brings in the garden snake. "Mr. Potter," he says, "if you would." Harry leans over the desk. The snake lifts its head. Harry says in fluid, conversational parcel tongue, something that produces a small, specific sound in the classroom, 30 students simultaneously hearing a language that is not language. A sequence of sounds that resolves, for Harry, into "you smell like grass and stone." The tall one smells like old paper, and which resolves for everyone else into something that bypasses the ear and goes straight to the spine. No one screams. No one backs away. They have 3 weeks of context. Remus speaks immediately, clearly into the silence. Parseltongue is a rare inherited gift with a documented history predating Hogwarts. Salazar Slytherin had it. Several gaunt family members had it. Harry has it through a line of inheritance I am not at liberty to detail, but which is fully documented with the Ministry. He looks around the room. Tom Riddle had it as well. Harry Potter is not Tom Riddle. You have sat in classes with Harry for a full term and a half. I will leave the character assessment to you. The class absorbs this. In the back row, a Ravenclaw named Terry Boot raises his hand. Can you ask it what it thinks of the castle? Harry asks. The snake considers. Dark below, Harry translates. Old dark. Not bad dark. Just old. Several students write this down. The chamber entrance is confirmed in February. Hermione identifies the mechanism, the specific tap in Myrtle's bathroom, the Parseltongue trigger that operates it, through cross-reference of 3 sources: the architectural documents, Myrtle's accidental testimony about the strange hissing she heard before she died in 1943, and a Founder-era text Remus retrieved that describes Slytherin's private construction as accessible only to his true heir, or one who speaks in his tongue. They descend on a Saturday, with Remus positioned above and the full Marauder communication chain active, James and Lily at the manor with the resonance map running, Peter and the castle walls in rat form tracking their position, Sirius at the Ministry in case anything requires immediate legal intervention. Harry speaks the entrance open. The pipe drop is not elegant. Hermione casts a controlled descent charm so neither of them arrives at the bottom at speed. The chamber itself is what it is: ancient, vast, damp, the kind of cold that comes from stone that has not seen warmth in 50 years. The stone serpents on the pillars look down at them with the patient disregard of things that have been waiting longer than any living thing in the castle. Then, the basilisk comes. It moves from the far end of the chamber with the sound of a great weight displaced across stone, a pressure wave of movement that reaches them before the creature does. Harry steps forward, in front of Hermione, and she steps forward beside him in a fight and does not intend to start. Harry speaks, not a command, not a Parseltongue order snapped at a creature being used as a weapon. He speaks the way he spoke to the garden snake in class, directly, with the assumption that there is a mind present worth addressing. "You are old," he says, in Parseltongue. The basilisk stops. "You have been here since 1943, Harry continues. "The last one who called you into this chamber did it by right of blood and used you to kill a child. I know this." He pauses. "I am also the right of blood. I am not asking the same thing." The silence in the chamber is absolute. The basilisk lowers its enormous head, its eyes closed, always closed, the only mercy in its design, face the floor between them. "You are not him," it says. In Parseltongue, its voice a sound felt more than heard, a resonance in the stone. The speaking boy who gave the last order, "You are not him. I'm the other one," Harry says. "The one he tried to kill." A long pause. The chamber breathes around them, the torches guttering in the displaced air. "His orders remain," the basilisk says. 50 years of orders. 50 years alone. "His orders ended with him," Harry says. "I am offering different ones. No students, no killing. The lower levels, the lake, the old tunnels, yours. Fed, honored, free of the chamber's walls." He looks at the great sealed eyes. Not a weapon, a guardian. The basilisk is still for a very long time. Then, "The small one who smells of ink and intention," it says. "She is your paired one?" "She is," Harry says. "She is afraid," the basilisk observes, without judgment. "She is also," Harry says, "already thinking of 3 ways to neutralize you if this goes wrong. She is afraid, and she is here anyway. That is the kind of afraid that matters." Another silence. "Compact," the basilisk says finally, the word in Parseltongue carrying the weight of something very old, agreeing to something it has been waiting to be offered. "I accept." Harry names it Regulus. He says, "After someone who chose courage when he had every reason not to." They emerge from the chamber's entrance into Myrtle's bathroom, 45 minutes after they descended. Remus is waiting in the corridor outside with his arms folded and his expression set to the careful neutral he uses when the situation has exceeded his briefing materials, and he is processing. He looks at Harry. He looks at Hermione. He looks at the bathroom door behind them. He says slowly, "The resonance signal on the map just moved from the chamber to the lake's lower subsection." "Yes," Harry says. "The basilisk is now in the lake. The lower tunnels." He prefers darkness. Harry pauses. "His name is Regulus." Remus is quiet for a moment. He pinches the bridge of his nose, which is what he does when he needs a second before he can form a sentence. Hermione, beside Harry, looks at the ceiling. She looks back at Harry. "You adopted a 60-foot snake," she says. Harry grins. The full one, Lily's smile, James's recklessness. He's on our side now. Hermione holds his gaze for 3 full seconds. Then she opens her notebook, uncaps her pen, and begins writing what will become a 7-page report on the compact's terms, Regulus's confirmed temperament, the chamber's now accessible architectural features, and 3 potential tactical applications for a controlled environment basilisk ally in future operations. "Of course he is," she says. "The Goblet of Fire is an ancient artifact with a single blunt function. It reads intent, not ambition, not popularity, not raw power. Intent." The magical contract embedded in its construction, laid down in the 14th century by the tournament's founders, is looking for the student whose participation most purely represents their school's competitive standing. It weighs this against magical capability, force of character, and the specific quality of commitment that distinguishes someone who wants to win from someone who intends to. When Hermione submits her entry on the evening of October the 30th, she also submits a legal brief. It is 12 pages, handwritten citing the original 1294 tournament charter, specifically Article 7, Section 3, which specifies a champion of the school rather than a single champion of the school. and 3 subsequent legal commentaries from the 15th and 16th centuries, in which the wording was debated and the ambiguity was noted, but never formally resolved. She and Harry spent 3 weeks in the Hogwarts library and 2 weeks in the Manor's archive establishing the precedent. The brief is filed simultaneously with the goblet, with the Department of Magical Games and Sports, and with Gringotts for independent record. Dumbledore reads the brief when they hand him a copy on October the 29th. He is quiet for a longer time than most things make him quiet. Then he says, "This is technically correct." "We know," Hermione says. "The goblet burns blue for Harry on October the 31st. It burns blue for Hermione 14 seconds later." The Great Hall's reaction is not the roar of a crowd witnessing something exciting. It is the specific, layered silence of 400 people confronting something they did not know was possible and are now rapidly revising their position on. Victor Crumb's jaw, in the Durmstrang contingent, does something that he does not recover from for several minutes. The dragon task is on the 24th of November. The champions are briefed the evening before. Victor Crumb, the Chinese fireball, Fleur de la Cour, the Welsh green, Cedric Diggory, the Swedish short snout, Harry and Hermione, the Hungarian horntail, assigned as a unit, which is a decision the organizers make somewhat reluctantly and which the horntail's handlers endorse, because 2 smaller targets move differently than 1 large one. The arena is full. The Hungarian horntail is not a subtle dragon. It is large, dark, and has arrived at its current situation with the disposition of a creature that finds the entire arrangement beneath its dignity. Harry goes wide left. Hermione goes wide right. This is the movement pattern they spent 6 years developing in the Manor's training courtyard. Split-axis pressure, forcing a 2-point focus on a creature designed for single-vector threat response. The horntail tracks Harry first, which is the expected choice because Harry moves faster and covers more ground. While it tracks Harry, Hermione begins the environmental work. She transfigures 40 square meters of arena floor into a raised stone maze in 11 seconds. Not walls, ridges. Low, precise, angled specifically to restrict the horntail's rear leg mobility without triggering the creature's core threat response. She has studied the horntail's anatomical constraints for 3 weeks, and the structural design is exact. The ridges create a footing problem, not a barrier, because barriers make dragons angrier and footing problems make them careful. The horntail slows. Harry circles back. He does not engage the dragon directly. He accesses the nest from the side, the horntail rotating to track Hermione's continued environmental modifications, and lifts the golden egg with a standard accio that clears the nest clean. The egg is in his hands before the horntail completes its rotation. He holds it up. The crowd is on its feet. Hermione reverses the transfiguration on the arena floor, because the rules specify the arena be returned to its original condition. And she checked. And because the horntail's handlers will need stable footing for the recovery, and crosses to Harry in the center of the space. The horntail, its nest intact and its egg retrieved bloodlessly, regards them for a moment with the amber-eyed calculation of a creature assessing whether further engagement is worth the energy. It decides it is not. Hermione takes a folded document from inside her robe and hands it to the nearest judge. "Dragon welfare documentation," she says. Confirming the horntail was unharmed, and that we've cross-referenced its transport conditions against the 1989 magical creature relocation standards, there are 3 items non-compliant. We'd like them addressed before the creature is returned to its preserve. The judge stares at the document. The score is the highest in tournament history. Victor Crumb watches the numbers appear on the board with an expression that has moved past admiration into something more complicated and private. The lake task is on the 24th of February. They identify the solution at breakfast on the 23rd, when Hermione, reading the clue for the 7th time, says gillyweed, obviously, or a bubblehead charm, or partial transfiguration of the respiratory tract. And Harry says, "Bubblehead, we need the hands free," and Hermione says, "Agreed." And they spend the next 40 minutes discussing the secondary objective. Because there is a secondary objective, the Hogwarts Lake's lower subsection, Regulus's territory now, the great serpent threading his way through the deep tunnels, with the slow sovereignty of something that has been given space to be itself, contains, according to Lily's resonance map, 3 magical signatures she flagged as possible Horcrux resonance. Inconclusive. False positives, as the full investigation determined, each one a naturally occurring dark magic residue from historical events on the grounds. But the methodology of mapping them, the passive resonance scan, the cross-reference against the locket's confirmed baseline signature, has never been run at lake depth. This is the opportunity. They enter the water at the starting signal with bubblehead charms precise and sealed. The lake opens below them, cold, dim, deep, the light from above dimming within the first 30 feet. They find the Merpeople village in 11 minutes. The hostages are located in 12. While Harry negotiates with the Merchieftainess, in a mixture of gestures and their limited shared vocabulary that Hermione has been building since second year when she first found a Mermish grammar text in the restricted section, Hermione runs the passive resonance scan. 3 passes, each covering a 60-degree arc, cross-referenced against the baseline reading she has memorized with the same precision she has applied to every piece of information that matters. The 3 flag signatures read as residue, not Horcrux. The map can be updated. Harry retrieves both their hostages, Ron, who is not entirely pleased about the cold, and Gabrielle Delacour, because Fleur has been delayed and Harry is not leaving a child in freezing water on a technical point about rules. And they surface at 47 minutes, inside the time limit, with both hostages and 3 pages of updated resonance data. Ron, wrapped in a towel on the dock, says, Was she doing research while you were down there? Mapping, Harry says. She was mapping the lake bottom. We'd never had a clear scan from depth before. Ron looks at him for a long moment. I'm cold, he says, and slightly bewildered. That's reasonable, Harry agrees. The maze is on the 24th of June. They work in complete silence. This is not a stylistic choice. It is a tactical one. Established in the Manor training courtyard at age 10 when James introduced them to nonverbal field operations, and Hermione determined that their combined accuracy in silent communication was higher than their accuracy with verbal codes. 10 years of training together produces a coordination that doesn't require words. The signals are physical, a tap on the shoulder for obstacle ahead, a closed fist for stop, 2 fingers for confirmed magical signature, a flat palm for move now. They developed 14 standard signals by age 11 and added 6 more in the first 2 years at Hogwarts, as the situations they encountered outgrew the original set. The maze takes 17 minutes. They navigate 3 blast-ended scroots, a boggart that produces 2 simultaneous manifestations and requires them to work in parallel, a section under a powerful confundus that Hermione identifies by the specific quality of disorientation and counters with a grounding technique Lily taught them at age 9, and a sphinx who presents a riddle and seems genuinely surprised to have both parts of the answer returned before she has finished the question. When they reach the cup, they stop. Harry looks at it, Hermione looks at it, then Hermione looks at Harry. Already checked it, Harry says. I know you did. I saw the wand movement when we came through the last section. Clean. No portkey magic, no secondary enchantments. He holds out his hand. Lily's detection protocol. 5-point scan. Hermione has run her own 4-point scan while he was running his 5. The results match. The cup is exactly what it is supposed to be. A trophy. They lift it together. The crowd's roar reaches them through the maze walls. Before the light does, a sound that begins as noise and resolves as they emerge into the open air, into something more specific. Not the excitement of a competition concluded. The sound of a crowd that has been watching something it did not know it needed to see and is only now understanding what it has witnessed. Hermione identifies Bartemius Crouch Jr. in October. It is the cadence of his defensive spell work that gives him away. She noticed it in the second week of term, the way his Auror-trained instincts produce a specific defensive micro-movement on the left side before any cast, a tell she cross-referenced against the confirmed magical signatures of active Aurors in Ministry files Lily had on record. Moody's documented signature does not match. She writes the report in one sitting on a Thursday night. Harry reads it at breakfast Friday, passes it to Remus, and Remus has it to James by owl before noon. The operation to unmask Crouch is clean and quick. James coordinates with Amelia Bones, a Ministry team, a confirming priori incantatum on the Moody imposter's wand, a real Alastor Moody found in a trunk in his own office, confused and furious, and using language that would empty a room. Crouch is arrested on the 15th of November. The blood ritual never happens. Voldemort never gets his body back. The graveyard in Little Hangleton remains, on this night and the next, and all the nights after, empty. In the Champions' tent, before the third task, Victor Crumb sits across from Harry and Hermione while they run their warm-up drill. 3 minutes, no wands, pure movement. The footwork pattern James taught them at age 5 evolved over 9 years into something that looks like choreography and functions like combat geometry. They do not speak during it. They move in the specific synchrony of two people who have shared a physical training language for a decade and whose bodies have developed a working vocabulary independent of thought. Victor watches the whole thing. He is the most decorated competitive duelist in Europe at the age of 17. He has trained under masters in Bulgaria since he was 12. He recognizes what he is looking at. He is quiet for a long time after they stop. Then, in careful English, in Bulgaria, we have a word. He seems to consider whether to say it. Then he decides against it, not because it isn't true, but because some things don't translate. He nods at them instead, once with the respect of a craftsman acknowledging something built beyond his specifications. He looks at the floor. Harry and Hermione take it as exactly what it is. Nagini finds her own food in the fields outside the Riddle House. She has been doing this for 3 years, moving through the long grass at the property's edge, taking rabbits and field mice with the unhurried precision of a creature that has never needed to hurry, returning each night through the gap under the cellar door to the dark room where the wraith waits. She does not choose to return. The Horcrux bond pulls her back the way a tide pulls water, persistent and directionless and impossible to reason with. She has been a Horcrux since 1991. She does not know this. What she knows is the weight of something that does not belong to her, settled somewhere between her scales and her spine, cold and constant, and not her own. She knows the wraith's voice in her mind, commanding, always commanding, and the way her body sometimes moves in response, before she has decided to move. She knows the specific quality of existing in 2 registers simultaneously, her own ancient serpent consciousness, and something else riding alongside it that has no patience and no warmth and no interest in what she is beyond what she can carry. She does not have words for any of this. She has the weight. She has always had the weight. Peter confirms the location on a Tuesday. He has been rotating through the Little Hangleton area for 6 weeks in rat form, working a spiral pattern outward from the Riddle House, building the interior map visit by visit. The house is occupied by Nagini and the Wraith, which has, by June of 1995, achieved a rudimentary physical cohesion through the serpent. Not a body, not a full return, something between a wraith with enough matter borrowed from Nagini's proximity to act, to direct, to sustain itself at a low level of function without requiring a host. Lily's resonance map has been tracking Nagini's soul fragment signature since November. The signal strengthened in January, which is what accelerated the timeline. A strengthening signal means the fragment is drawing on its anchor more heavily, which means the wraith is attempting something. Peter emerges from the gap under the cellar door on a Tuesday evening at 7 and transforms in the ditch 50 meters from the property, where Remus is waiting with a coat and a flask of tea. Peter drinks the tea in 3 swallows and says, 7 rooms confirmed clear. The wraith is in the back study. Nagini moves between the study and the east-facing bedroom. There are no other inhabitants. He tells Remus the interior layout in 12 minutes, which Remus writes in the shorthand he has been using for intelligence reports since 1980. The signal locations, the structural weak points, the 3 possible ingress routes, and the one he recommends. By Thursday, Lily has a full tactical overlay built onto the resonance map. By Friday, James calls the briefing. The unit assembles at the Manor's map room at 6 in the morning on Saturday, the 22nd of June. 7 people around the table, James at the head, the tactical overlay spread out before him, Lily beside him with her compact resonance detector, and the WardNet schematics she has been building for 3 weeks. Sirius with his arms folded and the particular stillness he carries into operations, all the restless energy concentrated down to a single point, useful and ready. Remus with his field notes and the Wolfsbane taken 4 days running, Peter with the interior map memorized, Harry and Hermione at the far end of the table in their seats. Harry is 14, Hermione is 15. They have been in this room for briefings since they were 9. James looks at them. He does not treat this differently from how he treats their presence at any other briefing, because treating it differently would be dishonest, and they would know. He says, Objectives. Nagini is confirmed. Horcrux. The sword of Gryffindor is the destruction tool. Hermione, confirm the protocol. Hermione opens her notebook. The sword was acquired through goblin negotiation in March. Goblin-forged metal absorbs the properties of what it encounters. It took basilisk venom through Harry's second-year contact and has been documented as lethal to Horcrux material since. One clean strike through the center of the fragment's anchoring point. I've mapped the anchoring location to Nagini's lateral line, approximately 40 centimeters behind the head. She pauses. The strike needs to be surgical, not a killing blow, a fragment extraction. James nods. The Wraith. Lily speaks. If Nagini's fragment is severed, the Wraith loses its primary corporeal anchor. It will lash out. Legilimency, most likely, directed at the nearest familiar mind. The Brotherhood bond is our counter. All seven, holding simultaneously, a distributed mind is an unreadable mind. She looks at James. We've trained this, James confirms. He looks around the table. Questions. Peter raises his hand slightly, old school habit. If Nagini survives the extraction, that's the objective, Harry says. Clean extraction, not a killing blow. He looks at Peter. She's been used, same as Regulus was used. She doesn't choose this. Peter lowers his hand and nods once. They arrive at Little Hangleton at 11 at night. The village is asleep. The lane to the Riddle house is dark, the hedgerows high, the sky overhead clear enough that the stars are doing actual work. Harry and Hermione are under the cloak, the true cloak, big enough for both of them now in a way that requires them to stand closer than is tactically ideal, but which Sirius has been making comments about for 2 years. Remus takes the outer grounds in human form first, moving through the field to the north of the property with the deliberate economy of a man marking positions. Then, at 12 minutes past 11, he transforms. The Wolfsbane managed transformation is not the horror of an uncontrolled one. It is still not nothing. Remus Lupin goes down onto his hands and knees in the long grass and comes back up differently. Larger, gray. The amber eyes changed. The human mind, present but distant, available the way a reference text is available, rather than the way a person is available. He takes the north perimeter, and nothing living comes through it. Sirius and James move along the east wall. They do not speak. They have been working together long enough that speech is mostly redundant in the field. They operate on the same set of instincts, calibrated by 15 years of friendship and 10 years of war. Lily raises the ward net from the south position, kneeling in the dry summer grass with her wand moving in the long layered arcs of her most complex charms work. The net goes up in sections, each one anchored to a physical point she marked on her last visit to the area in April. 3 fence posts, a collapsed stone wall, the oak at the property's northeast corner. When the final anchor takes, the property is sealed. Nothing apparates in or out. Nothing port keys. Nothing passes the boundary without Lily's knowledge. Peter is already inside. He has been inside since 10:45, riding a hedgehog's worth of shadow along the cellar wall, memorizing the updated positions, placing 3 prearranged signal markers, small charmed stones that register on Lily's detector, at the confirmed locations of Nagini's current route. At 11:20, his prearranged signal fires. 2 short pulses on the detector. Interior confirmed clear. Nagini in the east bedroom. Wraith in the study. Harry and Hermione take the front door. The door opens on Parseltongue. Not a spell. Harry speaks to the house the way he spoke to the chamber entrance in second year. The lock mechanism is an old piece of dark magic Lily identified as Slytherin tradition, responsive to the bloodline. It recognizes him and steps aside. They move through the entry hall in darkness. The house smells of old wood and something chemical and the specific cold that belongs to a space where something without warmth has been living. Harry's scar is steady, not the sharp pain of direct legilimency, but the background ache of proximity. Present, manageable. The east bedroom door is slightly open. Harry pushes it further, slowly, and Nagini is there, coiled at the room's center on the bare floorboards, her scales catching the faint starlight from the window, her head raised and already oriented toward them. She has heard them. She knew before the door moved. Harry crouches down. He is 14 years old, on the floor of an abandoned house in Little Hangleton, 3 meters from a living Horcrux and the thing that has been riding her for 4 years. He folds his legs beneath him, wand in his right hand, the sword of Gryffindor strapped across his back, with the grip positioned for a cross-draw. He speaks to her in Parseltongue. "I know you," he says. "I know what you carry. I know you didn't choose it. Nagini's tongue moves. Her head tilts by 1 degree, the serpent equivalent of attention, of the specific focus that means something has been said worth hearing. He puts something in you that isn't yours, Harry says. It rides alongside you, cold, not you. It has been there since before you knew what it was. He pauses. I am going to take it out. The silence in the room has texture. Then Nagini says, in Parseltongue, very quietly, it fights. I know. It will be loud, she says. The word in Parseltongue carries weight beyond its translation. She means not just sound, but pressure, the specific violence of something being torn from an anchor it has occupied for years. I know, Harry says again. I'm going to stay with you through it. You're not going to be alone in it. Hermione is already moving. She has the sword in both hands. She has been training the specific strike since March, working from Lily's anatomical diagram, the angle and depth calculated to sever the fragment's anchoring point without penetrating the muscle layer below. She approaches from Nagini's right side, wide and slow, and Nagini tracks her movement but does not strike. Hermione makes the strike clean. The sword takes the fragment, and the fragment does not go quietly. It tears free with a sound that is below hearing, and above it simultaneously, a concussive pressure that fills the room like a held breath released wrong. Nagini convulses, once hard, the full length of her body arching, and then goes still. The wraith comes through the wall. Not physically. It has no full physical form. It comes as pure legilimency, directed, targeted, the accumulated malice of something that has been reduced to nothing but will and fury, and the specific fixation of a mind that has spent 30 years failing to destroy a single family and has just lost its last anchor in the material world. It finds James Potter in the corridor. He is standing at the bedroom door. Sirius and Peter behind him. Lily already with her wand raised. The brotherhood bond active across all 7 of them. The distributed connection of a shared magical secret that has been running since October 1981. The wraith hits the bond the way water hits stone. Everywhere at once, and through none of it. James raises the counter-Legolemonesi shield Lily taught him, and holds it. It is not elegant. It is not the clean theoretical construct from a textbook. It is James Potter, with 14 years of a father's specific irrational, absolute refusal to let this thing near his son, made architectural, made real, made into a wall the wraith cannot find a crack in, because every potential crack, loneliness, fear, ambition, grief, has been filled in by a decade of chosen connection. The wraith presses. James holds. The bond holds through all 7 minds simultaneously. Sirius is fierce and bright. Remus is deep and steady. Peter's small and rat-shaped and harder than anything his size has a right to be. Lily's precise and layered and absolutely immovable. Harry's wide open and present. Hermione's structured and total and committed in the way of someone who decided once and does not revisit the decision. The wraith finds nothing to hold. No crack, no cold place. No single mind carrying something dark enough to serve as a foothold. It disperses, not dramatically, not with a final speech or a last surge. It thins, at the edges first, the way smoke thins when the fire beneath it goes out. Then the center, then it is gone, and the room is just a room, and the house is just a house, and the Yorkshire night comes back through the window with the smell of summer grass. James lowers the shield. His hands are shaking. Harry crosses the corridor in 3 steps and puts his hand on his father's arm. James looks at him, the scar, the eyes, everything he has spent 14 years protecting, and the shake in his hands gets worse before it gets better. He pulls Harry in, both arms, no space between them, the hug of a man who has been holding something at arm's length for a very long time and has just been given permission to set it down. Harry's face against his shoulder, Harry's hands gripping the back of his robes. From across the corridor, Sirius watches this with his jaw set and his eyes bright, and makes a wolf whistle that echoes through the abandoned house and breaks whatever was threatening to be too heavy to carry. Lily turns away, not because she is unmoved, because she is very moved, and this is James's moment, and she is choosing to give it to him. On the floor of the east bedroom, Nagini uncurls slowly. She raises her head. She looks at Hermione, who is standing near the window with the sword still in her hands, and the expression of someone who has completed a precise task under significant pressure and is now conducting an internal debrief. The cold is gone, Nagini says, in Parseltongue. Harry translates, his voice slightly unsteady. Nagini crosses the floor and coils herself gently around Harry's arm. She rests her head on his wrist. The weight of her is real and warm and entirely her own. She says she will stay, Harry says. Sirius looks at the ceiling. Of course she will, he says. Of course. 5 marks on the map room wall, all crossed through. The diary, the ring, the locket. Retrieved from the warded case in 1993 and destroyed by Remus using the sword on a cold February morning, with no ceremony and no audience. Just Remus and the sword, and the specific relief of a man striking through something he has been carrying since the night he sat with Sirius, and a house elf and a note from a dead boy. The diadem, retrieved from the room of requirement in a Hogwarts mission run during the Christmas break of Harry and Hermione's 3rd year. Peter and Harry working in rat form and cloak tandem through the castle's hidden passages. The cup, extracted from Gringotts in April by Peter alone. 11 minutes inside the highest security vault system in Britain. A performance so technically precise that Bloodclaw, reviewing the mission debrief, called it the finest single piece of covert intelligence work he had seen in a century of Gringotts service. And Peter had not known what to do with his hands for the rest of the day. 5 down. The 6th is the problem Lily has been building toward for 11 years. She tells Harry on a Sunday, not because Sunday is significant, because she has been finding reasons not to tell him since he was 4 years old. When the resonance map first showed the faint, specific signature she recognized immediately, and spent 3 days hoping she had misread. She has not misread it. She has cross-referenced it against every Horcrux baseline they have accumulated, against the locket and the diary, and the ring and the diadem and the cup, and the signal in Harry is consistent across all of them. Faint, old, not made. It does not have the deliberate, structured architecture of a created Horcrux. It has the quality of something that landed accidentally and held because the conditions were exactly wrong. She tells him at the kitchen table, which is where she tells him important things. She puts tea in front of him first, and sits across from him, and does not preamble. There is a fragment of Voldemort's soul in you, she says. It attached in October 1981, when the killing curse rebounded. It was never anchored intentionally. It is an accidental adhesion. The fragment had nowhere to go, and you were there and the conditions of your survival created a space it could occupy. Harry is quiet. I have known since you were 4, Lily says. I have spent 11 years building a way to remove it that does not require you to die. Does it work? Harry asks. Yes. How certain are you? Completely, she says. I do not tell you things I am not completely certain of. Harry looks at the tea. He turns the mug a quarter rotation on the table. He thinks, and Lily lets him think, and the kitchen is quiet around them, with the specific quiet of a house that has held hard things before and knows how to make room for another one. Does Hermione know? He asks. No one knows except me. Tell her, he says. I want her to check your work. Lily almost smiles. I was hoping you'd say that. Hermione reads the full theoretical framework in 4 hours. She sits in the library with Lily's 11 years of documentation spread across the table. Every resonance scan, every cross-reference, every iteration of the proposed extraction methodology, and she reads with the focused totality that means she is not just reading, but building a parallel structure internally, checking every load-bearing point, looking for the place where the logic fails. She finds 2 places where the logic required adjustment. She flags them. Lily looks at the flags and says, I revised those in 1993 and 1994 respectively. Check the appendices. Hermione checks the appendices. The revisions are correct. She closes the final document. She sits for a moment with her hands flat on the table. Then she says, the reverse Fidelius principle is sound. The brotherhood bond as a counterforce is sound. The extraction mechanism is sound. She pauses. The weak point is Harry's will. The procedure requires him to actively expel the fragment rather than passively endure the extraction. If he loses focus during the critical stage, if the fragment's resistance overrides his intent, it won't, Harry says, from the doorway. He has been there for the last 20 minutes. Neither of them told him he could come in. Neither of them told him he couldn't. Hermione looks at him. You don't know that. I know that I have been doing hard things my entire life, because the people in this house taught me how, Harry says. He crosses the room and sits in the chair across from her. I know that every time something needed holding, I held it. I know that I am not going to lose focus when it matters most. He meets her eyes. You would not lose focus. Neither will I. Hermione holds his gaze for a long time. Then she opens her notebook to a fresh page. Tell me exactly what you'll feel during the critical stage, she says. I want a full psychological brief so I know what to watch for. The extraction is scheduled for the 14th of July. The map room is prepared the night before. Lily clears the central table and lays a ward glass at its center. The same design used for the ring, scaled up. Its containment capacity calculated for a sole fragment of indeterminate size with a hostile anchoring resistance. Remus checks the seals 3 times. Sirius adds 2 additional layers he designed himself, which Lily examines and approves without comment, which is as close as she comes to saying good work. Peter arrives in the evening. He has been in the field for 3 weeks, and he is thin and tired, and he washes his hands at the kitchen sink for a long time before he comes to the table, which is something he has always done after extended rat-form missions, a ritual of return that no one has ever commented on, because it is his and he has earned it. Harry tells him what he needs. Peter sits with it for a moment. He looks at Harry, this boy who put his hand on Sirius's arm in the armchair when Peter was still rebuilding himself from the inside out, this boy who has been carrying a piece of the darkest soul in Britain since before he could walk. He looks at his own hands on the table. My specific magical signature, Peter says. You need the survival instinct resonance. Lily says it's the exact counter-frequency to a fear-anchored soul fragment, Harry says. The fragment attached because of fear. Voldemort's fear of death, the night everything went wrong. Your animagus transformation amplifies survival instinct magic. The counter-resonance disrupts the fragment's hold from the inside. My cowardice, Peter says. Not bitter. Precise. Your survival, Harry says. There's a difference. Lily explained it. Peter is quiet. Then, what do I do? Hold my hand, Harry says. During the critical stage. Don't let go regardless of what you feel. Peter nods once. I won't let go, he says. The morning of the 14th is clear. They gather in the map room at 9. The 7 of them around the table, Harry at the center with the ward glass in front of him, Peter on his left with his hand already in Harry's, Hermione on his right, James and Lily at the head of the table, Sirius and Remus flanking. The brotherhood bond activates through the standard ritual, the shared intent, the magic that has been running through all of them since the kitchen at Godric's Hollow on an October night in 1981. The distributed secret that Voldemort could never penetrate because it lived in 7 places simultaneously, and no single one of them was the whole of it. When the bond is fully active, it registers as warmth in the chest, which is not a metaphor. It is the actual physical sensation of 7 magical signatures resonating at the same frequency. Lily talks Harry through the procedure one final time. Her voice is steady. Her hands are steady. She has been practicing this steadiness for 11 years. You will feel the fragment resist. She says, it will feel like it is part of you. It is not. You have always known it is not. Every time your scar ached, every time you felt something cold and foreign in the back of your mind, that was the boundary. You have always known where you end and it begins. She looks at him. Find that boundary. Stand at it. Push. Harry nods. Peter's resonance will weaken its hold from the outside. The bond will contain it once it's free. Your will is the mechanism that moves it. She pauses. You are enough, Harry. You have always been enough. She steps back. Harry closes his eyes. What happens in the next 4 minutes is not visible from outside. From outside, Harry sitting still, his jaw set, Peter's hand locked in his, the ward glass on the table dark and waiting. The 6 people around the table holding the bond at full resonance, not fighting, not pressing, just present. 7 minds acting as one unified counterforce. No gap, no cold place, no darkness anywhere in the collective that the fragment could escape into. From inside, the fragment is where it has always been. Harry has felt it since he was old enough to feel anything. The specific cold of it, the foreignness of it, the way it has sat behind his scar like a stone in still water, present but separate, never quite his. He has carried it for 14 years, and he knows its exact dimensions and weight and quality the way you know the dimensions of a room you have lived in since childhood. He finds the boundary. He stands at it. He pushes. The fragment resists. It resists the way fear resists, not with force, but with weight, the accumulated weight of something that has been occupying a space for a very long time and has grown into the shape of that space. It presses back. It finds old anxieties, old griefs, old moments of doubt, and tries to use them as handholds. Peter's hand tightens. The survival instinct resonance comes through the point of contact. Not subtle, not theoretical, a physical current, warm and persistent and entirely unglamorous. The magic of a man who has survived every worst moment of his life by choosing to stay one more time. No heroics, no bright courage. The small, absolute, rat-shaped stubbornness of someone who has been afraid every day for 30 years and chosen to act anyway. The fragment's hold loosens. Harry pushes harder. The fragment tears free with a sensation like a splinter being drawn from deep tissue. A specific, located pain that has a before and an after to it. A moment when something that was inside is outside. And the space it occupied is just space, clean and ordinary and his. He opens his eyes. The ward glass on the table holds a small dark shape. It moves against the glass once, twice, a shadow in a bottle. It finds no exit. The glass was built by Lily Potter, and it holds. The room is very still. Harry lifts his right hand and looks at his palm. He has been looking for the difference all his life and has never been able to find it because the fragment was too old, too familiar. He can feel the difference now. The cold is gone. Not the scar. The scar remains, silver and thin, but the cold behind it, the foreign presence. The stone in still water. Gone. Just him. Entirely. Finally. Only him. Lily crosses to the table and picks up the ward glass. She carries it to the iron furnace in the map room's south wall. Prepared, preheated, the fiend fire already contained inside it. The blue-white fire that destroys what normal fire cannot. She opens the furnace door. She places the ward glass inside. She closes the door. The furnace runs for 90 seconds. On the map room wall, the Horcrux tally shows 7 entries. The 7th, labeled in Lily's handwriting, in letters she pressed hard enough to score the parchment. Harry, accidental aegition, extractable gets its mark crossed through. 7. All crossed through. The resonance map is still. Every signal dark, every frequency cold. The long, patient document that has carried the weight of Voldemort's fractured soul across 13 years of careful hunting shows nothing. An empty field. A clean map. Tom Riddle, who became Lord Voldemort because he was alone, because he trusted nothing, because he understood power as a thing you took from others, and never as a thing that grew between them, is gone. Not defeated. Not driven back. Gone. Ended by the single thing he could not replicate, could not counter, could not find a way to weaponize. 7 people who chose each other at every crossroads, who held the bond across 14 years of war and grief and fear, who gave him nowhere to land. Hermione sits down on the map room floor. Not dramatically. She simply stops standing the way a structure stops standing when the load is finally lifted. Not a collapse. A settling. She sits on the stone floor with her back against the table leg and her notebook closed in her lap for the first time in as long as she can remember. And she does not move. Harry sits down beside her. They are 15 and 14 respectively, and they are sitting on the floor of a hidden manor house in the middle of England. And outside the window, the July morning is doing nothing more significant than being a July morning, which is exactly right. "We did it," Hermione says. The words are accurate and insufficient, and the only ones available, and she says them anyway. "We," Harry says. She takes his hand. They stay there in the quiet room, the map clean on the wall above them, the furnace cooling in the corner, until Lily finds them 20 minutes later and stands in the doorway for a moment just looking at them, her son and her daughter, as far as anything that matters is concerned, before she says, in the voice she uses when she is holding something very large very carefully, "Come and eat something." They come. The announcement goes out, on a Tuesday, not a press conference, not a ministry declaration. A single page, filed with the Wisengamot clerk's office and released to the prophet simultaneously, written in the plain procedural language of a legal document. Tom Marvolo Riddle, known as Lord Voldemort, is confirmed deceased. All associated Horcrux constructions have been located and destroyed. The threat to the wizarding and Muggle communities of Britain is ended. No further dark mark activity is anticipated. Signed by Lily Jane Potter, Magical Theorist, Order of Merlin First Class. Countersigned by Amelia Susan Bones, Minister for Magic, witnessed by Albus Percival Wulfric, Brian Dumbledore. The prophet runs it front page with no headline, just the document, just the words. The editor decides, correctly, that nothing she could write above it would improve on the weight of the thing itself. The wizarding world reads it over breakfast, and over lunch, and over dinner, because people keep picking it up again to confirm that it says what they think it says. Shops close early, not from grief, from the specific, slightly bewildered joy of a community that has been waiting for this sentence for 15 years and does not immediately know what to do with its arrival. The ministry, under Amelia Bones, begins the structural work in September of 1996. It is not fast. Bones does not do things fast when doing them correctly requires time. And she has spent enough years watching Fudge do things quickly and badly to have no interest in repeating the pattern. She works through the Department of Magical Law Enforcement first. A full audit, every position reviewed, every case file examined. 11 Aurors are dismissed. 4 are referred for prosecution. 9 new positions are opened and filled through a competitive process that does not consider blood status as a qualifying criterion for the first time in the department's recorded history. James takes the senior Auror command position in October. He restructures the training program on Marauder doctrine, not because it is his doctrine, but because it works. The emphasis shifts. Less dueling theory, more field intelligence. Less individual heroics, more unit coordination. The new intake of Auror trainees runs footwork drills in the first week that James learned from his father at age 16, and which Harry and Hermione ran in the manor courtyard from age 5, and which now belong to the institution rather than the family. James teaches a class on counter-legilimency in the second month. The class is oversubscribed. He runs it 3 times. Sirius takes his Wizengamot seat permanently in January of 1997. He wears robes for the occasion that are technically within the formal dress code and technically within the definition of acceptable color, and which Remus, seeing them for the first time in the antechamber before the session, describes as a choice. Sirius takes this as a compliment. The Werewolf Rights Act of 1996 passes on the 14th of March, 31 votes to 9. Sirius speaks for it for 22 minutes, without notes, which is 18 minutes longer than any previous speech he has given in the chamber, and which holds the room completely because Sirius Black, when he decides to say something true about someone he loves, does not do it quietly. He does not look at Remus during the speech. He does not need to. When the vote count is announced, he looks at the gallery, where Remus is sitting in the 3rd row, and Remus looks back at him with the expression of a man who has been waiting to be included for 30 years, and is only now, at this late date, finding the correct posture for it. Sirius sits down. The session moves on. Sirius stares at the table for a moment, then Peter, beside him, quietly slides a piece of paper across the table. On it, in Peter's small, careful handwriting, he'd have been pleased. Sirius reads it. He folds it. He puts it in his breast pocket, next to where Regulus's note used to live before he finally, the previous autumn, let himself place it in the family archive at Grimmauld Place rather than carrying it daily. He straightens his robes. He pays attention to the next agenda item. Remus Lupin is appointed to a permanent ministry advisory position in the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures in April of 1997. His title is Senior Advisor for Beings Classification Review, which means in practice that he spends 4 days a week systematically reviewing every classification in the Being Beast Spirit Registry that was assigned under criteria influenced by blood status bias or political pressure. It is slow work. There are 412 entries requiring review. He begins at A and intends to finish at Z, and has made no promises about the timeline beyond thoroughly. He finds it, on most days, the most satisfying work he has ever done. This surprises him less than he expected. Peter Pettigrew receives the Order of Merlin, first class, on a Friday morning in June of 1997, in a ceremony in the atrium of the Ministry of Magic. The citation reads, "For 10 years of covert intelligence service conducted at sustained personal risk, directly enabling the identification and destruction of 6 dark artifacts of the highest classification, the prevention of the Dark Lord's corporeal return, and the protection of persons under active threat. His service was conducted without recognition, without support beyond his unit, and without the option of acknowledgement. Until now, the wizarding world owes him a debt it cannot fully repay." Amelia Bones reads it aloud. She does not rush it. Peter stands at the front of the atrium in borrowed dress robes. His own are somewhere in the manor, and he forgot to retrieve them. With his hands clasped in front of him, and the expression of a man who has rehearsed equanimity and is discovering it is harder to maintain than expected when the thing happening is real rather than imagined, Sirius gives the speech. It is 4 minutes long. It covers second year at Hogwarts, the Shrieking Shack, the alley in Hogsmeade, and the 14th of July in the map room. It does not use the word brave. It uses the word present 5 times, which Sirius has always understood as the more accurate term for what Peter is and has been. A man who showed up every time to the thing that frightened him most and stayed. Peter does not know what to do with his hands during the speech. After, in the corridor outside the atrium, when the crowd has thinned and the formal part of the day is over, Harry finds him standing by a window looking at the ministry's internal fountain, with the Order of Merlin in his hand. Harry stands beside him. They look at the fountain together for a moment. "You held my hand," Harry says. "On the 14th, I told you I wouldn't let go," Peter says. "I know." Harry pauses. "That's why I'm saying it." Peter turns the medal over in his hands. The weight of it is specific and unfamiliar, and not entirely comfortable, which is exactly right. Comfortable would mean he had expected it. He has spent 30 years expecting nothing of the kind. "I spent a long time," Peter says, "believing that being frightened made me useless." "I know," Harry says. "It doesn't." "No," Harry says. "It doesn't." The map room wall is repainted in the summer of 1997. The tally is photographed first, 7 entries all crossed through, and the photograph is framed and mounted in the corridor outside the library, where it has been since. Then the wall is stripped back to bare stone and replastered and painted the same pale gray as the rest of the room. And the map itself is rolled and stored in the archive. Its decade of intelligence preserved and indexed by Hermione over 2 weekends in August, with the thoroughness of someone who understands that history is only useful if it is legible to the people who come after. The map room becomes a library annex. Bookshelves go up along 3 walls. A second reading table is installed. Nagini takes up a position near the east window where the morning light is good, and spends her days there in a coil that visitors to the manor have learned to navigate around without fuss. Harry and Hermione sit their newts in June of 1998. Hermione's results are, by a margin, the highest recorded in Hogwarts history across 7 subjects simultaneously. The examiner for ancient runes writes a personal note to the Board of Governors, describing her runic composition paper as a contribution to the field rather than an examination response. McGonagall frames the note. Harry's results are, across the same 7 subjects, uniformly excellent rather than historic, which is exactly how he wants it. He is not competing with Hermione. He has never been competing with Hermione. They are not the same kind of brilliant, and they have known this since she corrected his footwork on the first day and he asked her to show him again. He joins the Aurora program in September. She accepts a research fellowship at the Department of Mysteries in the same month. Their desks are on different floors of the Ministry building. They have lunch together on Thursdays. This arrangement satisfies both of them completely. The Granger House in Oxford hosts Christmas every year from 1995 onwards. The dining table, which was not designed for 9 people plus 1 large serpent, is extended by magical means that Dan Granger now performs himself. He asked Lily to teach him the engorgement charm for the table specifically in 1996, practiced it 4 times in the garage before the dinner, and has not required assistance since. He is unreasonably proud of this. Emma considers the pride proportionate. They eat. They argue about things that are not the war. Quidditch, ministry policy, Remus's progress through the classification registry, the specific question of whether Sirius's new robes are acceptable for a Wizengamot member, position. Contested, vote, deadlocked along predictable lines. Peter tells a story about rat form navigation in a Malfoy Manor drainage pipe that is funnier every year. James adds details that Peter leaves out for modesty. Lily corrects both of them on the operational timeline. Harry and Hermione sit at the end of the table and eat, and listen to the noise of it, the specific, accumulated, irreplaceable noise of people who chose each other and kept choosing each other and have ended up here, at a table in Oxford on a December night, arguing about robes. After dinner, when the table is cleared and the fire is lower and the conversation has settled into its quieter register, Dan Granger stands up with his glass and says, as he has said every year since 1995, in the plain, unhurried voice of a man who means every word and does not require an audience for it, To the people at this table, to the ones who kept each other safe, and to the ones who aren't here, who made it possible. Glasses raised, names said or not said, held internally instead. Regulus, the Order members, the Muggle families who never knew what had been done for them. They drink. Outside, the Oxford winter does what Oxford winters do, quiet and cold and entirely indifferent to the warmth inside the house. The fire burns in the grate. Nagini moves through the hall on her way to her preferred spot near the radiator, and Dan Granger steps aside for her with the unhurried ease of a man who has been stepping aside for a 60-foot serpent for 3 years and has made his peace with it. Harry watches his family. The word has never required qualification. Not something like a family, not practically a family. His family, found and chosen, and built over 15 years of choosing it daily, in map rooms and kitchen tables, and training courtyards and ministry corridors, and every small ordinary Tuesday that turned out, in the accounting, to be the whole of it. James catches his eye across the room and raises his glass. Harry raises his back. The fire burns. The war is over. The future has not been written yet. They are holding the pen. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.